mid-teens. So despite the wet and windy weather, it is actually very mild for the time of year. Now, across northern Scotland, well, that's the place to be because we're going to end the day with clear spells, 1 or 2 showers, but otherwise mostly dry weather. As this spell of rain moves through central Scotland, another bout of wet weather pushing through Northern Ireland into the southwest of Scotland, reaching the central belt around 6 or 7 p.m. And then this wet weather moving through Western England and Wales, a very soggy end to the day for Cardiff, for Exeter, and then that sweeps through the Midlands into eastern England through the evening, although fizzling out, so not much rain really for the southeast. A very mild night for the vast majority with that strong wind and areas of cloud in the south. Temperatures staying up at 14 or 15 Celsius, single figures further north, and having seen a dry day in northern Scotland on Tuesday, we're going to see spells of rain through Wednesday and a strong wind developing, but this wind is coming from the north, so it's going to turn colder through the day across Shetland and then eventually the north of the mainland as well as Orkney. Some of that rain turning to snow over the tops of the mountains, for example. A clear slot in the middle across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern England, but further wet weather in the south where it's going to be very mild once again.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua. Now, the outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie breaks his silence, standing by BBC journalists after Donald Trump threatens to sue the corporation for $1 billion over a misleading Panorama edit.
They're doing work, I think, that's incredibly important. I want to thank every one of them. They're doing a wonderful job. Also, everyone across the BBC doing their thing for the UK, and personally I'm here to lead and support them.
Yeah, and Tim Davie this morning addressing staff in a 40-minute Q&A in which he told the BBC they must fight for their journalism.
Yes, the UK's jobless rate hits its highest level since 2020. New figures show unemployment rising faster than expected, piling fresh pressure on a very pressured Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of her budget.
The Prevent Counter-Terror scheme is no longer keeping the country safe. That is what a review found, which calls for a radical overhaul of the system.
Overweight? Well, you might now struggle to get into the United States of America. Yes, Donald Trump's new visa rules target people with health conditions from obesity to asthma to stop so-called taxpayer burdens. Should the government do the same here?
Tributes across Britain as the nation falls silent to honour the fallen this Armistice Day.
Heavy rain in Belfast didn't dampen spirits, hundreds turning out to take part in this very dignified 2-minute silence.
Yes, well, in a rare event, the 1 o'clock gun atop Edinburgh Castle rang out at 11 to mark Armistice Day today as Scotland and, of course, the rest of the UK fell silent to remember all those that didn't come home.
Breaking news here at GB News. Yes, in the last few minutes, the outgoing BBC Director General has spoken to staff after stepping down from his role. Let's take a listen.
Been a tough few days, hasn't it? And very tough. And I want to say to everyone, I really know that these moments in the BBC, I've lived them actually as a staff member. I've seen the BBC go through very tumultuous times, and they can be discombobulating. You can ask questions of, where is the BBC going? Are we rudderless? What happens to the future? And they're stressful, they're difficult, and you know, maybe one of my biggest emotions at the moment is I care desperately about the organisation. You know, the thousands of people who work for it, with every cell of my body, I think are absolutely wonderful in what they do. And I think, you know, we all need to be looking after each other and making sure we set everything in context. Now, I think linked to that, by the way, I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the support and kindness around the organisation, for each other, not just for me, but for everyone during that period. And we need to look after each other in that. That's really important. I think what I would say is these times are difficult for the BBC, but they get through them. We will get through it, you know, we'll get through it. And I want to mention a little bit how we do that in a second, because it's so important. And we will thrive. We will thrive. And this narrative will not just be, you know, given by our enemies. It's our narrative. We own things. So why do we have traction and ownership in that? Well, as I say, I've been here before, and the key thing is the BBC is more than one person. I'll talk about, you know, we can talk a little bit about my decision and where we're at, but it's about thousands of people, 23,000 people, and more besides making our programmes. And at the end of the day, the BBC is that. It's all of our actions together and us working and doing our business every single day. I mean, I was listening to our radio services yesterday, watching programme, went to the iPlayer to try and find a bit of relaxation last night. It's all there. And if we keep delivering, the facts speak. And I am here to help. We can talk a little bit about transition. Last couple of points for me is I do hear everyone when we have to be very clear and stand up for our journalism. We are a unique and precious organisation.
Well, that was Tim Davie, the former Director General of the BBC.
All right, so your thoughts on that, if you think the BBC is worthy of saving? I mean, he seemed quite defiant. Then send us your thoughts, gbnews.com/you'll say. I've got to say, watching that, he did not look that apologetic. He was defiant. I don't think, and I still maintain this, that he has understood the magnitude of what has just occurred. When Donald Trump is threatening to sue for $1 billion and the corporation has been brought into disrepute globally, I think that he's slightly delusional in thinking. He actually said, my decision, and I think he's referring to the decision to step down, which wasn't really his decision. No. If he hadn't gone, he would have been pushed.
Of course not. Well, it's a busy day of breaking news here, and there is indeed further breaking news. We'll just bring it to you now. Yes, just coming into us, Essex Council has lost its bid for a High Court injunction to block asylum seekers from being housed in the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Right, let's get the latest with GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, please tell us more.
Well, this is a judgment just handed down in the last minute by a High Court judge, Mr. Justice Mould. You remember, this is the substantive hearing into an action lodged by the Epping Forest District Council to try to end the use of the Bell Hotel in Epping as a migrant hotel. They had been granted a temporary injunction that would have meant that the 138 asylum seekers that were there at that time back in mid-August would have had to have vacated the premises by the 12th of September. But he has basically, the Court of Appeal ruled against that particular temporary injunction, saying that it was seriously flawed in principle, that the judge at that time, Mr. Justice Eyre, had not taken into consideration some key facts. He hadn't allowed a last-minute intervention from the Home Secretary, for instance, that would have given him a better idea of the knock-on ramifications for the asylum system in terms of accommodating those asylum seekers throughout the country. That decision was overturned, and now, as I say, this is the more substantive hearing that Epping Forest District Council was waiting on. I should say that Mr. Justice Mould concludes that an injunction is not, he says, an appropriate means of enforcing planning control in the circumstances of this case. That's important because that was the principle that the District Council used to take their claim to the High Court, saying that Somani Hotels, the owners of the Bell Hotel, had broken planning laws, that they had not applied for a change of use, and changing the use of a hotel from paying customers, businessmen, tourists and alike, to then taking on a government contract to house asylum seekers, they said was absolutely a change of use that would have required planning permission, especially as it was a controversial move that brought with it lots of protests outside that hotel, and as such there should have been a planning application that was lodged by Somani Hotels. Indeed, that's what the original judge that heard this case, Mr. Justice Eyre, had agreed with. But as I say, the Court of Appeal, and now, of course, the High Court hearing this in more substantive form, has decided does not stand up to closer scrutiny, that the Somani Hotels did not require planning permission, or if they did, it's certainly not an argument for taking it to the High Court to be able to overturn its use as an asylum seeker hotel. So listen, there will be a lot of very disillusioned and angry people in Epping, given just how controversial this hotel has become. It was Hadush Kabatu, the Ethiopian, I should say, national who had sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl and a grown woman, who was sent to jail, who later was accidentally released and has finally been removed from this country, was the epicenter of a lot of the anger and unrest around the Epping Hotel that spread right around the country. So there's no doubt that there'll be anger in Essex, but elsewhere around the country as well, where local authorities and people were looking to the Epping Hotel example as one that they could use, perhaps to overturn the use of asylum hotels in their area as well. That now doesn't look to be an avenue open to them.
Yeah, well, what a rollercoaster ride this whole saga has been. Mark, thank you so much for bringing us that breaking news. We'll, of course, have more on it throughout the programme. We'll also be speaking to local residents in Epping to get their view, because that, after all, is so important, what these local communities think about what's happening to their own communities.
I think the only bit Mark missed out was the £500 that we paid Hadush Kabatu, which is the final nail in the coffin. But stay with us, because, of course, we had some breaking news. Outgoing BBC boss Tim Davie praised his staff with regard to what is happening. But joining us now from outside New Broadcasting House is GB News' national reporter, Will Godley. Will, what can you tell us?
Well, yeah, this call with BBC staff lasted for about 40 minutes this morning. It was a virtual call. Tim Davie wasn't sitting in front of them, but he was on their screens, and they were invited to ask whatever questions they wanted to. They were then chosen by other people to then put to Tim Davie. And some of those questions and his answers you heard earlier in the programme. An interesting bit that I heard in his call was when Tim Davie said, he told BBC journalists, "We have to fight for our journalism. We have made mistakes that cost us, but we have to fight." Of course, the reason we're in this situation in the first place is because of a mis-edit, a mistake around how they edited Donald Trump's speech, and of which, of course, he was quoted by saying, "We must fight." They edited that to mislead the audience. The BBC have accepted, but echoing Trump's rhetoric nonetheless. BBC, in their own fight, this time though surrounding their journalism, it wasn't just questions about Tim Davie's resignation, but also the charter renewal that's due in 2027. Tim Davie told the BBC that he thought they had a very strong case for that charter to go forward. And he was asked about his resignation as well. He told BBC staffers that the relentlessness of the role, the upcoming charter renewal, and pressure following criticism of the Panorama documentary on Trump were all reasons that led him to resign on Sunday. It's been described to me, though, the atmosphere as staffers inside the building behind me were listening to the call was an interesting atmosphere, and the questions that BBC staffers wanted answering weren't really the questions that were being asked. I'm told that they were asking questions about Trump, about this legal challenge, about allegations of bias, but perhaps they were being glossed over and not really the questions Tim Davie ended up answering in this 40-minute call. Someone described it to me as an atmosphere of obfuscation on this call, not really getting the answers they wanted, but Tim Davie praising BBC staff, saying how proud he is of them and standing by them as he's resigning.
Extraordinary there, Will, that there seems to be a bit of a head-in-the-sand moment, almost ignoring all of the challenges that the BBC has been facing, all of the news, the reasons for his resignation, and simply trying to shore up this ship, telling all the journalists they're brilliant. Well, clearly the organisation has not been brilliant in recent years. Clearly there were some big errors of judgment, and that's why he's had to go.
Well, yeah, that was a glaring hole when Tim Davie spoke to me and other reporters outside New Broadcasting House earlier this morning. He only gave about a 30-second answer where he was standing by BBC journalists praising them for their work. But a glaring part of his answer there was that he didn't make any reference to this scandal engulfing the BBC, nor did he apologise to President Trump. Of course, President Trump handed them a legal letter on Sunday where he gave them 3 demands. President Trump said, of course, that the BBC had to retract this BBC panorama with misleading claims. They also had to apologise to him and fully compensate him for the harm that they have caused. Well, the BBC have said that they are working through this legal letter and they will respond directly to Trump's demands in the coming few days, but clearly they have to do that by Friday at 10 p.m. our time. Otherwise, Donald Trump said he will be issuing them with a $1 billion legal battle, and that is something the BBC simply can't afford and would cost license fee payers a huge sum of money. Of course, as the BBC seek to renew their charter, keep this license fee going and ensure their funding continues amidst an atmosphere over recent years of that funding not keeping up with inflation and having to make a huge number of real-term cuts, and a large number of those cuts have come to the news department, and perhaps one of the reasons why we're in this situation in the first place.
All right, Will Godley, thank you very much. All they had to say is sorry. Sorry seems to be the hardest word for the BBC.
Yeah.
It's sorry. I don't understand why, well, we're going to wait till Friday, we need to deliberate. Ooh. It's quite obvious that they need to do a magnanimous apology. And it is interesting that Tim Davie used the word fight for our journalism. Wonder if he'd like that to be cut and pasted and edited onto something else. Do you know what I mean?
Tim Davie calls on violent revolution from staff using word fight. I mean, it's easy to do, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, well, we don't do it here on GB News, otherwise we'd be taken to the cleaners by Ofcom. Somehow the BBC have managed to drag that out for about 6 months. Anyway.
Well, much more still to come on Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon, of course. It seems to be another afternoon of breaking news, whether it's the migrant hotel, the Bell Hotel, whether it's the BBC or whether it's the dire economic statistics that we've come out today.
Yeah.
We're across it all. But if you'd like a little break from all of that news, well, of course, it's Christmas soon, isn't it? And how about having Christmas on us this year? Yeah, here are all the details that you need for a chance to win our latest giveaway.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts, the tree, the trimmings, everything you might need for a fantastic festive day. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB 17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, the government's Prevent programme is under fire. Is the UK doing enough to tackle extremism here at home before it takes hold? But after the break...
New unemployment figures out today show joblessness rising to its highest level since 2020. What's gone wrong for Labour, I wonder? What's gone wrong with their plan for growth?
All of that and indeed more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Brave.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We have a very interesting guy in the studio called Will Whitehorn, who's a space expert. And the reason we got Will in is that NASA have plans to send astronauts to live on the moon. And
it's not how you think, though, is it? It's inside glass bubbles that are going to be made from lunar dust.
OK.
Not in houses.
The American Space Agency is funding research to see if it is possible. And let's get Will, who does believe it's possible. And will you be going, Will?
Well, not to the moon, obviously.
No.
That's going to be a bit expensive. But and I think NASA will be sending astronauts who probably had to train for several years. But I do intend to go to space in the next couple of years, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how's it going to work? So NASA's unveiling this plan to send astronauts to live on the moon, living in glass bubbles.
Yeah, made of basically moon dust. So there's a huge amount of silica and other similar materials on the moon. And basically using a microwave process, like a microwave oven, of a very sophisticated type, they're going to be able to meld those and construct, and also using 3D, technology, they'll also be able to construct the interiors on the moon. Now, that's because rocketry is expensive, so it's very expensive to take them up.
So it's not that you fill a big space container and bring it to the moon full of this stuff and then assemble it there. You're actually going to fabricate it, make it on the lunar surface.
That's one of NASA's plans. So the first mission going back shortly, in which Elon Musk will be involved with the new Starship rocket that you've probably seen. The Starship is the biggest rocket ever built in human history. And that's going to be able to also go to Mars. But it's also going to be able to carry industrial material to space.
Right. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain, unless your name is Rachel Reeves. Yes, it's 21 minutes past midday, and the rate of unemployment has risen to its highest level since COVID. Yes, up to 5% in the 3 months to September. That shows signs that the job market has significantly weakened.
Yes, I wonder why. Britain's joblessness rate has surged to its highest level for more than 4.5 years, and wage growth has slowed further as the labour market continues to weaken.
Well, joining us now is business journalist Ian King. Ian, it couldn't come at a worse time.
No, but really this is a continuation of a trend that we've seen in the labour market for some time now, really dating back to Rachel Reeves's first budget at the end of October last year. The data, we've not only had data from the Office for National Statistics today, but we've had data from HM Revenue and Customs as well, who have a pretty good early sight of what's going on in the job market, because obviously most payrolls are now run on a real-time basis. In other words, the reporting goes straight to HMRC when those payrolls are run. So you get a pretty good idea what's going on in the jobs market. And what we learned today from HMRC is that in the year to October, some 180,000 jobs were lost, payroll jobs were lost in the economy. And I think that's down to a couple of factors, one of which is obviously the rise in employers' national insurance contributions last year. But I suspect there are other factors as well, such as the tariffs. That has undoubtedly made a lot of employers somewhat nervous as well, particularly in sectors such as in industry and car making, a bit of hesitancy. And obviously we've got a budget coming up around the corner. So again, employers are going to be a bit hesitant to take on new employees right now until they see the devil of the detail in the budget.
Well, I think, Ian, you've missed one thing out as well that's on the way down the line, the Employment Rights Bill. I mean, that is going to be a terrible, terrible thing. What kind of an impact do you think that will have on it?
Well, again, that is going to be a key contributor to hesitancy on the part of employers in terms of taking on new staff. As you say, there are all sorts of things in this workers' rights package that will make employers nervous. The fact that, for example, it makes it far easier for unions to get a foothold in workplaces where they may not have done so previously. And crucially, of course, you've got this so-called first day rights thing, whereby someone could start work at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by lunchtime they could have launched a grievance process against their new employer at a tribunal. This is something that employers are particularly nervous about, especially small businesses. That, again, is going to make people really, really wary of taking on new staff. They're probably going to go into a good deal more detail. Now, it should be pointed out that this is not actually law yet. And I am hearing from one or two people that this actually may be diluted prior to hitting the statute book. So we shall wait and see. Another thing, I mean, as I say, the budget is really, really important here. We've seen suggestions over the last few days that Rachel Reeves is potentially going to take away some of the tax advantages of salary sacrifice. In other words, paying money into your pension to avoid tax. That has a great benefit for employers as well, because they avoid paying national insurance contributions on that portion of a worker's salary. But if that's diluted, then potentially that replicates, or it's another hike on employers' national insurance contributions. And that, again, as I say, we saw that's probably the single biggest factor over the last 12 months to have hampered employment. And again, you get a rerun of that, and it's not particularly good news.
That's a really important point. I hadn't considered that. The sort of the hidden cost of employing people will go up even further. I suppose people talk about, oh, you can tax a pension contribution because people won't feel like it's money that's being taken away from them because they're not going to take it out until they've retired. You know, could be more than a decade from now that actually they would feel that they were worse off. But there's an immediate impact when it looks at the employer's side of those contributions. That's interesting. I suppose this all feeds into a massive, massive question mark over the British economy. And even though politicians continually say that our fundamentals are strong, we have the highest inflation in the G7. Some indications today that wage growth has now fallen. Indications, of course, that employment has been falling, payroll employment at least has been falling ever since the Labour Party took office 16 months ago. I mean, these economic indicators seem to all be flashing red on the dashboard of the Chancellor. Are there any signs of any good news for our economy?
Well, I mean, you could say actually today's figures make it far, far easier for the Bank of England to contemplate cutting interest rates next time around. You mentioned the fact that wages are growth is starting to come off. It's still twice the level of where the Bank of England would want it to be. You're still seeing wages growth of north of 4%. So that is something, and in the public sector, it's actually even higher. In the private sector, it's down to about 4.2%. It's overall, it's 4.6. That is still appreciably higher than most members of the Monetary Policy Committee would want to see it is. But I think the fact that you've got this tapering off in earnings growth, the fact that you are seeing this big drop-off in payroll employment, I mean, those are all very, very good reasons for the Monetary Policy Committee to consider cutting interest rates when they meet again. But as I say, we've got a budget in between then, and the MPC will really want to see what's in the budget before going ahead with a rate cut. That's why they sat on their hands this month.
Ian, if you were to apportion blame as a percentage to the policies created by the Chancellor to this situation that we're in, what percentage would you give?
Well, as I say, I think the biggest single factor, the reason that we've got this weakening in the labour market is the employers' national insurance contribution increase that Rachel Reeves imposed last year. That has been immensely damaging to private sector employment in particular. I don't think Trump's tariffs have helped. And don't forget, you've also had factors like the hack on Jaguar Land Rover. I mean, that caused mayhem in the jobs market, particularly in the West Midlands, where JLR and a lot of their suppliers are concentrated. You have people being temporarily laid off work there for a while. Of course, that doesn't affect the overall claimant count, but it does cause a certain amount of upheaval in the labour market, as I say, in the West Midlands in particular. So that is a crucial factor as well. And don't forget also, you've got this big rise. We've had successive now increases in the national minimum wage. We've got another big rise coming up in April next year at the beginning of the tax year. Now, for a lot of big employers, they will suck that up. They'll wear that. If you're Tesco or Sainsbury's, you will probably you'll go through and pay that, obviously, without complaining too much, although you may seek to recoup some of the extra cost of that by putting up prices to customers. But if you're an SME, that really does bite into you. That makes it much harder for you to hire people, and that is a big problem. And there was a very good report in the Financial Times last week, which pointed out that the extent to which the national living wage is going to rise in April next year, it takes basically for full-time wages for someone who's on the national living wage, it will take them basically to the same sort of level that a graduate recruits joining a professional services firm, a law firm, an accountancy firm is going to be on. And that has implications for Britain's universities. It has implications for whether people actually want to go to university. I mean, the FT in this article, was a very good piece, quoted one CEO as saying, well, why would someone go to university and rack up £45,000 worth of debt when they could earn that stacking shelves? And that's a real question for the sort of complexion of the UK jobs market going forward.
There hasn't been such a large percentage of wages in this country fixed and controlled by the government since the 1970s. I mean, that is the most extraordinary statistic. And I was reading, before we get a bit too pink paper heavy, but I suppose it is a business segment, so why not? The FT was also writing in relation to that about how this government campaigned almost as a new Labour campaign, sort of saying, look, we're gonna be pro-enterprise, we're gonna be pro-growth. But as soon as they get into office, it looks like they've been behaving more and more like an old Labour government. New Labour, of course, let the private sector do its thing with a generous welfare state attached. I mean, the famous Peter Mandelson quote, we don't care if you get filthy rich as long as you pay your taxes. And yet this government seems to be regulating the market, whether it's the Employment Rights Bill, the Renters' Rights Bill, the wage controls, I mean, the effective rent control that will be placed on the private rented sector. I mean, in all of these different areas, they're stopping the market from working rather than just doing the old Blair thing of let the market run and redistribute at the end of the process.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the piece to which you refer was by Martin Wolf, who's the FT senior economics commentator yesterday. I mean, Martin Wolf's been writing about the UK economy for decades now, and that was a really striking piece, I thought, yesterday, where he said, yes, New Labour has been completely displaced by old Labour. And, I mean, there is an old saying, you know, those who fail to learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. And we learned from the 1970s, really, that prices and incomes policies don't work. And it would be pretty catastrophic for the UK economy if that lesson did have to be learned all over again.
Well, it's a gloomy picture, but maybe there'll be an interest rate cut in it all. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian King. He's a business journalist. Yeah, no, I think this government seemed to have a habit of doing literally the exact wrong thing. And he didn't answer my question attributing a percentage of blame. I would attribute 90%. What would you give a percentage of blame towards Rachel Reeves for this current situation?
I think it's really hard to run numbers. I do understand.
What would you say?
I do understand. That, I mean, there are international problems, of course. Of course there are.
I get it. So what percentage would you say is her fault?
Less than half. No, sorry, less than half are international. I'd say more than half are domestic choices. Because I mean, every single country in the world is sort of sailing in this convoy. And yeah, there's some bad weather. But not every ship in that convoy has spent the last year weighing itself down with more debt. and throwing the sails off. You're poking holes in the side of her hull. I mean, right? That's basically what we've been doing.
That's what she's been doing, yes. Anyway, Rachel, I hope you're listening, because you need to really sort this out. Otherwise, you know, I think your days as Chancellor will be numbered. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. More reaction to that ruling that asylum seekers can stay at the Bell Hotel in Essex after the local council fails in its High Court bid to block them. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Yes, thank you very much. The top stories: asylum seekers can continue living at the Bell Hotel in Essex after a council lost a landmark legal battle to remove them at the High Court. Outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie has told staff the corporation has to stand up for our journalism, insisting it will control its own narrative, which, quote, will not be given by our enemies. It comes a day after the US president threatened legal action if the corporation doesn't retract false and defamatory statements made about him in a Panorama documentary.
I've seen the BBC go through very tumultuous times, and they can be discombobulating. You can ask questions of, where is the BBC going? Are we rudderless? What happens to the future? And they're stressful, they're difficult, and you know, maybe one of my biggest emotions at the moment is I care desperately about the organisation. You know, the thousands of people who work for it, with every cell of my body, I think are absolutely wonderful in what they do. And I think, you know, we all need to be looking after each other and making sure we set everything in context.
The UK's jobless rate has risen to a level not seen since the late 2020, according to official figures. It rose to 5% in the 3 months to September, up from 4.8% in the 3 months to August. And the Princess of Wales has led the nation in a 2-minute silence in remembrance of the fallen on Armistice Day. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me at the top of the hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, there is so much more coming up on today's busy and breaking show.
Yes, we'll be speaking to a local resident on that ruling that asylum seekers can stay at the Bell Hotel in Essex after the local council failed in its High Court bid to block them.
All of that and indeed much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, if you've not had any rain yet today, chances are you will see some arriving later on. That's because there's plenty of it around. We do have an area of low pressure just to the west of us, and it's this that's driving frontal systems across the UK, and we end up in this warm sector between the warm front that's making its way northwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland at the moment, and then that cold front that's going to bring some heavy rain into parts of southwest Wales and also across parts of southwest England as well. Further east across parts of England, actually staying largely dry through large chunks of the day, even some glimmers of brightness, and in the sunshine feeling relatively mild for the time of year. Obviously pretty unpleasant where it's wet, and also need to factor in there will be some strong gusty winds. We're talking close to gales in some exposed spots. Now, as we go through the end of the day across the far north of Scotland, actually largely dry with some clear skies, but across the rest of Scotland, well, it is going to be wet and it is going to be windy. Rainfall totals building up. We could see some disruption, some flooding possible too. Most of the rain will have cleared away from Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but it is staying wet across parts of northern, western England and also parts of Wales as well. Staying dry for now across parts of eastern England. However, as we go overnight, that rain in the west is going to sweep its way through, and so it is going to turn wet here as well. There will also be some drier weather though developing across central southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Here where we get clear skies, it could turn a little fresh for some of us, but most places staying mild. Across parts of the south, the cloud and rain could stay in the low teens Celsius. And then tomorrow we start off with 3 zones of weather really. Rain in the far north or rain towards the south. They'll sandwich together, but in between there is a drier and brighter slot for some parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. Temperatures again on the mild side for the time of year, highs of around 16 Celsius towards the southeast.
thank you so much for helping us to reach 8 million followers and subscribers across our social media channels. That's 8 million fearless Brits standing up for what really matters.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Delays are anticipated today on the A47 northbound, stretching from Pontypridd to Abercynon, so plan extra time for your journey due to heavy congestion. A contraflow is currently operational on the A90 near Brecon in both directions due to essential planned maintenance work, with specific travel restrictions in effect. Travellers on Oxfordshire's M40 southbound should take note of a broken down vehicle at junction 11, causing the closure of one lane and possible delays. In rail news, there is significant disruption affecting both Gatwick Express and Great Northern services today. Remember to stay up to date at gbnews.com for more travel news.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 20 to 1. Now, breaking news from earlier this hour. Essex Council has lost its bid for a High Court injunction to block asylum seekers from being housed in the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Of course, that was the hotel that the infamous sex-offending migrant Haidish Kabuti, who was sent to prison, was then let out by accident and allowed to roam the streets around about 48 hours until he was recaptured and then eventually bribed to go home with 500 quid.
But it was also the epicentre of the protests that we saw break out across the country.
Yeah.
When people, local communities, stood up and said, not here. We do not want hundreds of unidentified, undocumented men with nothing to do all day in an insecure hotel, very often near schools and playgrounds, in the centre of quiet communities.
Well, a lot of this was to do with the sort of planning permission that was not obtained as well for this, the change of use for it as well, which is one of the main reasons why people were complaining. But also, it does seem that we need to be getting a hold of this problem. The Labour Party said we're going to stop the use of them, but that could end up being a worse thing because where on earth will they go instead?
Well, do get your thoughts in on this issue. We want to know if you live in Epping, if you're in Essex, or indeed if there's a migrant hotel near you. gbnews.com/your say. Really interested to get your thoughts on this issue because it's not just about Epping, as important as Epping is. The initial response whereby Essex Council was able to say, look, we didn't give permission for the change of use, therefore the hotel cannot be a migrant hotel, that could have incited a wave across the country where local councils would actually control their own areas and say, we don't want a migrant hotel here. This ruling today now means that's all being rowed back upon. This has implications across the country.
Yeah, of course, they took legal action. The council took legal action against the owner. There was Somani Hotels. They said the accommodation wasn't the right sort of accommodation, also breaching planning rules. But unfortunately for them, that hasn't gone through. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, much more on that later in the programme. But in the meantime, the nation, of course, fell silent this morning to mark Armistice Day, remembering the moment that peace was declared in 1918 and the end of the First World War.
Events are taking place across the country to commemorate all those who have died in armed conflict.
Well, let's cross live to GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie, who is in Belfast for us. And Doogie, a poignant day.
Very much so, that 2-minute silence. It does make the hairs in the back of your neck stand, there's no doubt about it. It was very bad weather here in Northern Ireland and hundreds turned out to take part in that very short ceremony. Of course, there was thousands here on Sunday for the Remembrance service itself, but it is quite humbling to hear Belfast fall silent and people looking with their own thoughts and remembering exactly what went on. And when you are a reporter and you've been out in these type of zones yourself and you see people, you see the aftermath of war, it really does hit you quite hard to see people back at home remembering, people that were never there, would never have seen what the result of war is. But there is a real bad taste here in Northern Ireland amongst the veterans over the weekend. The new veterans minister taking part in an interview in the Times and refusing to say whether paramilitaries or former paramilitaries would take place in this new Legacy Act that Labour is trying to put forward. We've noticed this morning the NIO has put out a very strange statement saying it was basically from Number 10 saying that that would not happen. There is an adjournment debate coming up on Thursday with Sir David Davis to make sure that the veterans here are protected, but many of them are saying on this weekend of all weekends, why are they even talking about veterans still being taken to court in Northern Ireland? We believe that the second reading of that bill will be next Tuesday or Wednesday in Westminster, and it is becoming more and more controversial as this Labour government, who did away with the Tories' legacy bill, is now trying to struggle with pleasing everyone at once, and of course covering up, or not covering up, trying to make somewhat a silk purse out of a size that Tony Blair left in 1998 when he gave amnesties to terrorists in Northern Ireland that killed many, many British servicemen. So really a very mixed weekend in Northern Ireland, and you could actually feel the frustration here on Remembrance Sunday. In fact, one Sergeant Major of the Paras who was involved in one of the bloodiest battles in the Falklands said they attacked an open minefield and never had to worry about their back. But that's no longer the case, and veterans are really pushing this Labour government.
Thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. Right, let's cross live now to Edinburgh, where GBNews Scotland reporter Tony Maguire is there for us. Tony Maguire.
Hi. Yeah, good afternoon as it is now. Well, we've been here in Edinburgh really for a few hours now, you know, and the rain really opened up here, a yellow weather warning to kind of add to the solemnity of the moment really. And actually all through today we've been speaking to people about this year as a whole actually, because of course we had two huge anniversaries this year. First of course with VE Day and then with VJ Day a little later in the year, you know, and the conversations really hinged on the fact that it's been a good year to remind people that Remembrance is indeed for many people, especially the families of those who haven't come home from wars, you know, it is very much a year-long kind of thing. Now, here today in Edinburgh we had the service. It was, of course, as always, run by Royal British Legion Scotland. And, you know, here I think is really my favourite part in all of Scotland of the Remembrance Garden here in Edinburgh. We're surrounded by thousands and thousands of crosses, each bearing the name of a family member and a loved one of somebody who didn't come home. Now, one of the people here who was kind of talking and in the mix at the Remembrance service in Edinburgh was Robert Aldridge. He is the Lord Provost. Think of him as a bit like a mayor here in the city of Edinburgh. And I asked him about this day, especially and what it means to so many people.
It's always a really poignant season. It's a great chance for people of Edinburgh or wherever they are in Scotland simply to reflect on the incredible sacrifice that people made in a number of conflicts, whether it was their lives or indeed their health, mental or physical, for our benefit. And the freedoms we have today are totally down to their selflessness. It's a real time for us to reflect and show our gratitude and admiration for what they've done for us.
Now, we're a wee bit earlier in the day to get the full effect, but the Scott Monument that's standing behind me here in Edinburgh, usually brightly lit up red to mark this day. So if you are in the city, be sure to keep an eye out for that later on.
Tony Maguire, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's lots more still to come on today's programme.
Yes, we'll be speaking to a local resident that ruling that asylum seekers can stay at the Bell Hotel in Essex after the local council failed in its High Court bid to block them.
Well, in the meantime, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, here's the latest forecast in Europe.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
A lot of fine weather at the moment across the Med, but whilst it's warm in Spain, there is some wet and windy weather moving through Madeira, approaching the Channel Islands and also affecting Portugal. Later, that's going to push through parts of Spain. But ahead of it, we've got a southerly airflow and above average temperatures, a lot of sunshine through Italy into Greece as well. Keen breeze here, 1 or 2 showers, and you can see that unsettled weather affecting Tenerife on Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now gone 10 to 1. And let's return to that breaking news from this hour. Yes, Essex Council has lost its bid for a High Court injunction to block asylum seekers being housed in the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Well, joining us now is Branch Secretary of Reform UK, Epping Forest, Karen McKeever. Karen, this is very, very disappointing because I personally thought you might win this one.
Yeah, it really is. First of all, thank you for having me on. It is so shocking. I mean, my heart goes out to the family as always. You know, the wonderful people of Epping, the wonderful community in Epping. We have been peacefully protesting since July, and you know, it's just banging your head against a brick wall. It's why the government, they had an opportunity here to show that they're listening to their people and that they're in touch. Instead, you know, they're not supporting us. They don't care about us. That's how it feels. And we're just let down again. And it's really worrying. You know, people in the community are worried. It's just, what next? You know, what next? It's just shocking. You especially today of all days, of all the days today. I mean, I've just come from an amazing Remembrance service with the local community and the children. And, you know, it just I just don't understand the logic. It's wrong on every level. It's next to a school, which is why we've been peacefully protesting. There's trouble all over the country with these hotels, but this particular hotel is next to a school, and for some reason that doesn't seem to matter.
I think everyone can empathise with the struggle, frankly, that so many people in Epping have been, and it's been cross-party as well. I mean, it seems that there is not a single person, not a single local resident who actually says that this is the best place to put refugees, even if you believe that refugees should be housed on the public purse. And yet the government throughout this case has said, look, they do want to close the hotel. They want to close all of the hotels, but they want to do it in an ordered way rather than with sporadic legal judgments. What do you say to their claim?
Well, I think here they have an opportunity here to act and show that they are listening and, you know, close this hotel, let the rest of the country see that they are listening and they are looking to have a plan and make things better for everybody across the country. They could have just used us as an example, but they haven't, because you know what? They don't have a plan. And these people just keep coming, you know, and when you look at the heroes, you know, the heroes that we've been remembering today, you know, they sacrificed to protect us and our borders. And right now our borders are in chaos, and it's scary. It's scary for everybody throughout the country, and particularly, you know, I'm on today to talk about Epping. Because we have been like a beacon for the rest of the country. We've only conducted ourselves with pure dignity, and we've been peacefully protesting week in, week out. And it's just wrong that doesn't matter. It's wrong.
Karen, what now though? If this is, you know, you've lost the ruling, what are you guys going to do now?
Well, I'm not an organiser, but I fully support the organisers with their next move. I stand side by side with them, and whatever they do, I will be with them. But let me tell you, they will continue to protest. The protests won't stop. We have to have that hotel closed. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand the legal side of it, but I imagine there'll be other opportunities to maybe try to further appeal. As I say, I'm not a lawyer. We'd have to have a lawyer on to confirm things like that. But we won't give up. We will continue to protest until that hotel is closed. It is wrong. It's next to a secondary school. And you know, God forbid anything else happens. God forbid. You know, the government have got enough stuff on you know, problems on their hands with this hotel alone. God forbid any other horrible things may happen. You know, it's just... I'm so concerned.
Karen, on that point, I've got to ask you, where would you lay the blame if something else happens? If, God forbid, there's another sexual assault, if there's another attack emanating from this hotel, would that be put at the foot of the Prime Minister?
100%, the government, 100%. You know, the only way this mess is going to get sorted out is to have a change of government. They're not listening. They're not sharing any plan. They're not reassuring the people of the country. You know, they're just taking these people in every single day. We don't know who they are. The undocumented males that are in that hotel could be anybody, and that is our fear. You know, I've been on telly many times now talking about this. You know, women afraid to walk their dogs. We live in Epping Forest. It's a beautiful nature reserve. You know, ladies are afraid to ride their horses. There's been so many horror stories, and yet none of that seems to matter. You know,
it doesn't, does it? They don't seem, Karen, they don't seem to be listening. I hope they will. Well, Karen, it's been really good to talk to you. That's Karen McIver. She's the branch secretary for Reform UK, Epping Forest.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Do stay with us. It's an extraordinary afternoon of breaking news, and we'll have more of it after this short break.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. message or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The Royal British Legion is launching the Poppy Appeal to raise funds to support the armed forces community.
Well, the launch will be held at Frameless, where veterans supported by the RBL will share their stories amid a spectacular, immersive poppy landscape projection.
Well, the appeal will encourage the nation to wear a poppy to send a personal message of thanks to those who serve.
Well, let's talk to our national reporter, Will Godley.
And this is all part of the Royal British Legion's fundraising, this Poppy Appeal, happening from now until Armistice Day on, of course, 11th of November, raising money for the armed forces community. They're hoping to raise £50 million to support the some 7,000 veterans, family members and armed forces. And when you were in Afghanistan, that's when your military career came to an unexpected end, wasn't it? What happened there?
So I was the point man in a foot patrol, and unfortunately I was involved in an explosion which subsequently took my hearing from my left ear, and due to that I was forced to leave the army for medical reasons.
And since then, Jason, you've been supported by the Royal British Legion. What kind of support have they offered for you?
Well, it's a vast array of support, really. It can be financial, you know, mental health. They can signpost you for different various charities and support that, you know, as veterans that we really essentially do need, you know, to rebuild our lives and get to a better point, you know, and be positive in our lives and know that we've got that hand on our shoulder when it's needed.
And I can hear you sounding a little bit emotional talking about it. What kind of a difference has that made, that support, on your life?
Oh, it's massive, you know, you can't really... It's not something you can put into words.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th of November. I'm Nana Akua.
And I'm Tom Harwood. Now, asylum seekers will remain housed at the Bell Hotel in Epping after the local council loses its High Court bid to block their stay.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary says this is a dark day for democracy and that Epping residents have been silenced by the Home Office.
The outgoing BBC Director General, Tim Davie, breaks his silence, standing by BBC journalists after Donald Trump threatens to sue the corporation for $1 billion over a misleading Panorama edit.
Yeah, the outgoing Director General held a 40-minute Q&A with BBC staff in which he told them they must fight for their journalism.
Elsewhere, the UK's jobless rate hits its highest level since the COVID pandemic. New figures show unemployment rising faster than expected, filing pressure on Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of the budget.
The Prevent Counter-Terrorism scheme is no longer keeping the country safe, the review has found, which calls for a radical overhaul of the system.
Overweight? Well, you might now struggle to get into America. Yes, Donald Trump's new visa rules will target people with health conditions from asthma to obesity. Well, it's all to stop so-called taxpayer burdens. But should the government do the same here?
And it took 75 goes and cost £1,700. But one learner's finally passed their theory test. The highway codes never looked so expensive. Well, you're kind of a newbie to the roads. I mean, how many times did it take you to pass your driving test?
Just the once.
Is it?
Just the once. And as soon as I passed, it was on this very programme that I popped up on my phone, called into Emily, who was hosting at the time, and was delighted to tell everyone that I'd passed with only 2 minors, which are only about going a little bit too quickly around the corners. So I was pretty chuffed to pass first time, but I did leave it so very late. I mean, I could have taken the test on my 17th birthday, which would have been 11 years, 12 years ago? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'll go back to my 17th birthday. I passed second time because they say first-time drivers are always the worst. Because my sister passed first time. She's my younger sister.
Yeah.
She's going, I passed. Anyway, she took our dad's car out. We had a little Orion that we were allowed to use, a Ford Orion. Remember those? And she got caught running a red light.
Oh, no! You're not supposed to do that unless you're cycling.
How dare you? Yes.
But no, it's marvellous fun driving, though. I think I've, for more than a decade, while I could have been driving and wasn't, I think I've missed out on something that is actually a great joy in life. I mean, being under your own steam, not having to rely on someone else. I mean, it's hugely liberating.
Under your own steam, bar all the speed cameras, traffic lights, other people. I don't know. No, driving is great fun, but I'm wondering at home, how many times did it take you to pass your test? We'd love to hear. And any driving test pass stories, gbnews.com/you'll say. It's a lot harder these days because we didn't have all the written theory and all that. We just went out on the roads and you assessed there.
Yeah, although I have to say it did take me 2 times to do my theory.
Ah, there you go.
but that's because I was one of these cocksure people who walked in thinking, I don't need to revise. I just should. There are people. Everyone drives. You don't have to have a particularly high intellect to drive. And so I thought I'd just come in, do the multiple choice. Turns out you do actually need to learn some things first. You can't just sort of guess.
Do you know what you got for the multiple choice the first time?
I was so... It was annoying. I was like 1 or 2 questions away from actually having passed. Because a lot of them you can just use logic, but for some of them you do need to know some definitions of stopping distances or whatever else it is.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Well, send us your thoughts, your comments, gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories: asylum seekers can continue to live at an Essex hotel after a council lost a landmark legal battle to remove them at the High Court. Epping Forest District Council sought to block migrants lodging at the Bell Hotel in Epping by arguing its owner had flouted planning rules. But Justice Mole dismissed the claim, ruling an injunction was not an appropriate means of enforcing planning control. A wave of protests was staged outside the hotel in the summertime following the arrest of an asylum seeker living there who was later jailed for sexual offences. The judge today said he rejected the idea that hotel owner Somani Hotels had shown a flagrant or persistent abuse of planning control. Reacting to today's news, the Conservatives said the court had given a slap in the face to the people of Epping. The Queen and the Princess of Wales are attending services marking Armistice Day as events take place around the world. The Princess is at a ceremony at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire as the end of World War I was commemorated with a 2-minute silence. Queen Camilla is at Paddington Station in London for a wreath-laying ceremony, having travelled by train from Wiltshire. The Prince of Wales is also delivering a video message to young people, sharing his views on the importance of wearing a red poppy and to say that remembrance is for everyone.
When we remember, we connect with service in a personal way. And when we wear a red poppy or take a moment of silence, we are saying thank you. We have not forgotten, and we will not forget.
In other news, outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie has told staff the corporation has to stand up for our journalism, insisting it will control its own narrative, which will not just be given by our enemies, he says. It comes a day after US President Donald Trump threatened legal action if the corporation does not retract false and defamatory statements made about him in a Panorama documentary.
Seen the BBC go through very tumultuous times, and they can be discombobulating. You can ask questions of, where is the BBC going? Are we rudderless? What happens to the future? And they're stressful. They're difficult. And, you know, maybe one of my biggest emotions at the moment is I care desperately about the organisation. You know, the thousands of people who work for it, with every cell of my body, I think are absolutely wonderful in what they do. And I think, you know, we all need to be looking after each other and making sure we set everything in context.
Well, the US president threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion over the editing of his speech in the documentary. His legal team is giving the broadcaster until Friday evening to respond. Last night on The Late Show Live, GB News' Ben Leo had an exclusive interview with the lawyer representing President Trump.
The president is extremely frustrated, yet adamant in his belief that he is going to hold accountable those that engage in and peddle in false information and untruthful statements. And so he's upset about it for his own benefit and really for the community as a whole, given the fact that institutions such as the BBC have the ability and the free rein to engage in such defamatory conduct.
Shadow Culture and Media Secretary Nigel Huddleston told GB News the BBC owes Donald Trump, at the very least, a huge apology.
They were wrong, and Donald Trump has a perfectly legitimate concern here. Could be perceived to be misleading. It transparently was. I mean, doctoring the video, but also the whole programme. There was issues. If you look at the number of people who were interviewed, it was 10-1, the people who opposed Donald Trump to those who supported him. And there wasn't a compensatory programme for Kamala Harris. So I think the president has some legitimate concerns. When they make an error and when they have an error of judgment, which, by the way, the BBC chair has now admitted, they need to admit that they got it seriously wrong. What they did was mislead the public and give the impression that Donald Trump said something that he transparently did not.
Local Government Minister Alison McGovern told GB News the BBC is one of her constituents' most trusted media organisations.
I hope he is proud of the staff at the BBC, because I know that my constituents rely on and largely trust the BBC. It's one of our most trusted media organisations. And I would say, just as I was saying before a moment ago, if there actually have been editorial issues, the right thing is for the BBC to apply high journalistic standards and to get on and sort the problems out. If there are questions of, problematic edits or whatever, deal with the problems. I'm sure many people in media organisations like yourselves have experienced that. People should leave their political views at the door when they go into work as a journalism and ask the right questions and get to the truth.
And finally, latest data from the ONS shows a worse than expected rise in the rate of unemployment to 5% in the 3 months to September. That's up from 4.8% in the 3 months to August and the highest level since early 2021. This was more than the 4.9% expected by most analysts. The ONS said average regular wage growth also pulled back again to 4.6% in the 3 months to September, down from 4.7% in the previous 3 months, and was 0.8% higher after taking consumer prices index inflation into account. Wage growth is now the lowest seen since April of 2022. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound will buy you $1.3122 and €1.1348. The price of gold is £3,155.30 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is currently at 9,876 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past 1. Now, breaking news in the last hour. Essex Council has indeed lost its bid for a High Court injunction, all to block asylum seekers from being housed in the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Right, well, let's speak to our GB News Home and Security editor, Mark White, who is here to tell us more. Mark.
Well, there will be a lot of angry and disillusioned people in Epping, there is no doubt. Although, to be honest, I don't think they held out much hope of a positive outcome from this High Court ruling today, given the ruling that was handed down in August by the Court of Appeal when they overturned the earlier injunction that banned the use of the Bell Hotel in Epping for use by asylum seekers. They said at the time that they believed that that ruling, that earlier High Court ruling had been seriously flawed in principle, and that has effectively been upheld in today's decision, which said that an injunction was not the appropriate means of enforcing planning controls. Now, we've had a statement through from the Home Office reacting to this decision today. They say, "We are furious at the level of illegal migrants and asylum hotels in this country. This government will close every asylum hotel. Work is well underway to move asylum seekers into more suitable accommodation, such as military bases, to ease pressure on communities across the country." The statement finishes by saying, "We're working to do so as swiftly as possible as part of an orderly, planned and sustained programme. This judgment allows us to do that." I have to say that this has descended into a bit of an unseemly row now between the Conservatives and Labour. We've had this statement through from the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. He says, "The people of this is a dark day for democracy, and that the people of Epping have been silenced in their own town. Their council fought for them. Their voices were ignored. Labour lawyers fought tooth and nail to keep this hotel open, even after a migrant housed there was jailed for sexually assaulting a teenage girl." Well, in response to that, a Labour source has just said, "This is some brass neck from Chris Philp. If he wants to understand why there are so many asylum seekers in hotels, I suggest he casts his mind back to his time in the Home Office. He was the one opening all these hotels. Or perhaps he could ask the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, who bragged about ramping up their use." Listen, I don't think that the people of Epping and elsewhere in the country really want to just see politicians indulge in this kind of, exchanging of cannon fire here over an issue that is so hugely important to communities right around the country. Remember, the Bell Hotel was the epicentre of these protests that then spread right across the country. It was that man, the Ethiopian migrant Hadush Kabatu, who had assaulted sexually a 14-year-old girl and a woman near the hotel itself, was eventually jailed for 12 months, was mistakenly released, and then, of course, eventually removed from the country. But that really focused the concerns of people in Epping and right across the country about the potential dangers of housing all of these young men together in asylum accommodation.
It's an incredibly pressing issue. And Mark, just before you go, is this the end of the road for Epping? I mean, what happens next?
Well, this was a High Court decision. They could go, Epping Forest District Council, back to the Court of Appeal again. But given the Court of Appeal's judgment on the original temporary injunction, I'm not sure they will see that as a potential move. It's possible they could go to the Supreme Court, but look, if they do that, they're spending many, many thousands of pounds that, as a local authority, they just don't have. They may decide that it's not worth it, given the way in which this decision that was handed down here seems to be very decisive in the wording from this High Court judge, Mr. Justice Mould.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much. The irony being, of course, if they were, say, a migrant or someone who would, their claim had failed, they could keep going at the expense of the taxpayer. It is shocking, isn't it?
Well, there's much more breaking news this afternoon, of course. The other big story in town is that the outgoing BBC boss, Tim Davie, praised his staff this morning, saying the corporation must stand up for our journalism, insisting that it will control its own narrative, not just be given by our enemies.
We will thrive. We will thrive. And this narrative will not just be, given by our enemies. It's our narrative. I do hear everyone when we have to be very clear and stand up for our journalism. We are a unique and precious organisation.
Yeah, well, this comes a day after the US President Donald Trump threatened to sue the corporation for $1 billion over the editing of his speech in a documentary on Panorama. Have
you seen how, I think it was the Daily Star wrote up this story? $1 billion.
Not so funny.
In the style of Dr. Evil from Austin Powers.
Not so funny, because we'll be paying for it. Well, joining us now from outside the BBC broadcasting house is GB News' national reporter Will Godley to tell us more. Will?
Yeah, well, that clip you just played there came from a 40-minute call with anyone who works at the BBC who were invited to ask the outgoing Director General, Tim Davie, any questions that they might have amid this ongoing scandal that is currently engulfing the BBC. But it seemed from Tim Davie's answers he very much was looking to steady this ship amidst the choppy waters it finds itself in at the moment, praising BBC journalists, telling them that he's fiercely proud of this organisation and that they were doing a fantastic job, and wanting them to carry on amidst all the scandals and reporting around that. And of course, this legal letter from Donald Trump that BBC lawyers will be looking at and working towards at the moment. And this call, despite it being 40 minutes long, I'm told didn't really address the key questions in the room, whether the BBC was going to apologise to Donald Trump, whether they were going to settle with Donald Trump, or even whether there was claims or answering these claims of systemic bias at the BBC. None of those questions answered in this call, I am told, but we did hear from Tim Davie, who gave reasons for his resignation. I'm told he quoted the relentlessness of the role of Director General, the upcoming charter renewal and the pressure following this criticism of the panorama into Trump. And also we heard from him about the upcoming charter renewal. Of course, that is coming at the end of 2027, some 2 years, and he says there's a very strong case for the BBC in these negotiations about the upcoming charter. Of course, lots of speculation here in the building behind me about who will be the next Director General. Well, that will be their big challenge, ensuring their charter is renewed for the next 10 years.
All right, Will, thank you very much. That's Will Godley outside Broadcasting House.
Well, joining us to discuss this further is the former BBC producer, John Mayer. John, this is a crisis for the corporation.
It is, but who does Donald Trump think he is? This is the BBC,
President of the United States.
Who does he think he is? Come on. You know, bully, 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 bully. But he's virtually killed off PBS and NPR in the States. He sued NBC, ABC, CNN, New York Times. It's mainly bluff. He asked for £1 billion, and you know what he accepted? 15 million. So the BBC should just say, sling your hook, Donald. He's going to lose it anyway. How can you lie with a consummate liar as Donald Trump?
You're talking about lies, but you have to admit that they did doctor the documentary and change the meaning of the sentence. At the end of the sentence, towards the end of the sentence, sorry, I'll just get to the end and I'll ask. Towards the end of the sentence, he said, peacefully protest. Instead, they added fight, fight, fight. Now, if someone had done that to you, and you were, say, a big leader of something, surely you would have the right to sue as well, and I'd back you to the hill for that.
And the BBC should have actually come out and condemned that 6 months ago when they first got this report. Not now. It's too little, too late. You know, they should have said that was wrong. And the other things that Michael Prescott complained about actually need sensible investigation, not knee-jerk. The BBC being too little, too late. But, you know, well done, Tim, today. He's actually defending BBC journalism. I've read what he said. He defends it, and he says we have to fight for our journalism, and he's bloody right. You know, because they have to. Donald Trump is not to determine the BBC's journalism. It's for the BBC and for the British people to determine that. It is the British Broadcasting Corporation, not the Trump Broadcasting Corporation. So this is a time of maximum danger for the BBC and indeed for the British people, because the charter's coming up. The licence fee renewal is being talked about now. You know, do we want the BBC? What sort of BBC do you want? If you want it, fight for it.
John, you say that the BBC should fight Trump on this claim rather than acquiesce, rather than settle. But they've already admitted wrongdoing. They've already apologised. I mean, it's quite hard for them to fight this on a factual basis.
So they've apologised. So they've done it. They've done it publicly. So what more does he want?
Well, not to him.
He wants them to scrap the whole programme.
Well, John, we're all journalists. We know how libel law works.
Yeah.
If you libel someone and then say sorry, that doesn't get you out of having to compensate them.
So what do you want the BBC to do? Do you want them to crawl and say, "Oh, Donald, we're so sorry, we'll jump the whole programme"?
No, I'm interested in the logistics here of what they actually can do, not the rights or wrongs of what they should do, but where they're going to end up. I mean, if they fight this, I mean, that could be a pretty jeopardous position that they're putting not just themselves, but the licence fee payer.
Yeah.
I agree, but then I'm not saying fight. I'm saying, look, he's got 3 points he wants, as you know. There's this lawyer of his in Florida. You know, one is apologise, well, they've done that. Second is scrap the programme. Third is never show it again. The answer to the first one is yes. Second and third is no, no, no.
Well, I don't believe they've apologised yet directly to Donald Trump, and I think that's what he's after.
Well, why do they have to? Bloody hell.
Well, because it was... Oh, come on. Really, seriously, John. That's all he's asked for, a straightforward apology, and they should do it. And I don't see why they should be so defiant over that when they've clearly made a hash of this. They should just do the apology.
I agree. Indefensible, but they've apologised.
Not to him, they haven't.
All they have to do is that Mr. Trump at the front of the sentence. You know, what more does he want?
He wants them to apologise to him directly, John, and I don't think they have, and I don't think that's too much to ask. And I would expect the same thing if they did that to me. John Mayer, we've got to leave it there.
Ring him up.
All right, we've got to leave it there. John Mayer.
Say, sorry, Donald.
Yeah, well, if that does it and saves them $1 billion, I'd do it, wouldn't you? That's John Mayer. He's a former BBC producer. See, I mean, John was very defensive of the BBC, but it is, to me, that defiant attitude when they've clearly done something wrong. If you've done something wrong, like if you did something wrong to me, Tom, and you apologised to everybody else apart from me, I wouldn't be happy with that. I'd expect you to come and say, sorry, Nana, and I go, OK, that's fine, and I'd be happy.
I think the most interesting thing here, though, is jurisdiction. He wants to sue the BBC in Florida.
Of course, yes.
Open question as to whether the programme was actually shown in Florida. If it wasn't, the BBC might be able to wiggle its way out of this because the jurisdiction under which the laws Donald Trump wants to sue the BBC, well, actually, there was arguably no libel in that jurisdiction if the programme was not shown there.
Well, they can't do it in this country because, obviously, the time with which they could bring that has elapsed. But I would say that I don't think that matters, and if they do fight it, it'll still cost them a fortune anyway, whether they are likely to win or lose.
Well, let's watch this space. But in the meantime, it's the Great British Giveaway. Yes, here are all the details.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts, the tree, the trimmings, everything you might need for a fantastic festive day. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GBNews goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. only on GB News.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Unless you're looking for a job. Yes, the rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5% in the 3 months to September, showing signs that the job market has significantly weakened.
Yes, Britain's jobless rate has surged to its highest level for more than 4.5 years, and wage growth has slowed further as the labour market continues to weaken.
Well, joining us now is the Managing Director at Employment Hero, Kevin Fitzgerald. Kevin, it seems that there are lots of different ways that we can measure how many people are in work, what counts as unemployment, out of the labour force, all of the rest of it. I mean, the labour force survey shows pretty damaging stuff, and payrolled employment has been declining every single month since this government took office.
Yeah, and thank you for having me today. Employment Hero exists to ensure that SMEs see value in employment, and we make it easier for them. And what we did see last year after the last news about national insurance increases was an immediate reduction in employment. And why that's a major concern is SMEs in the UK obviously make up the majority of businesses and hire the majority of people. And it's taken 10 months to see any kind of rebound for hiring and confidence to come back. And I think what we're seeing now is actually that impact of unemployment being so high.
Well, I mean, obviously, Employment Hero. So I'm wondering then whether you would support the Employment Rights Bill that is currently going through, because there are many parts of it that would deter a business from employing people and would possibly exacerbate the problem. Do you support it, Kevin?
It's challenging. Like, we speak on behalf of our SMEs, and when we talk to them, like the challenges that they face when anything changes with, law like this or even payroll changes, is they're kind of stuck in a position where they really want to focus on growing their business, which results in employing people. And any kind of red tape or burdensome kind of changes that they see actually makes them kind of step back and, I guess, pause in their business activities and say, well, is this the right move for me to continue employing people? And how do I get a handle on these new laws, and how do I understand them, and how do I do the right thing to ensure that they are compliant? The reality is we just have to make sure that we keep removing red tape away from these businesses and let them breathe and let them continue doing what they're doing. They're already very resilient. We're seeing them hire again over the last couple of months, which is a decent sign, which does reflect their resilience, but also the necessary that they need to trade, they need to operate, and they need to grow.
Kevin, I'm just so confused looking at the rhetoric of this government, because on the one hand they say we need to get rid of we need to have a bonfire of red tape, we need to make it easier for our businesses, we need to bulldoze the planning system, all the rest of this stuff that sounds really good, and they sort of pay lip service to being pro-enterprise. But then they hurriedly legislate for far more burdens to be placed on business while they talk about lifting burdens from business. I mean, I just don't know which side of their mouth they're going to talk out which day of the week it is.
They don't understand.
Yeah, look, it's a real challenge for SMEs. Like they don't need more red tape. Like that's the reality of it. And while fiscal policy and balancing the books is very difficult, I think any government that's in power has got to take a step back and say, well, where's the actual impact of this? Because if they continue with this degradation of support for SMEs in each budget, what you have is a domino effect, which actually affects consumers, because SMEs have to look at it and say, well, we only have a certain kind of space to play in. If we are facing more red tape costs or more taxation, we have to pass it on to somebody. And usually that's us when we're buying their goods or services. So it's a massive domino effect.
All right, Kevin Fitzgerald, thank you very much. He's the Managing Director at Employment Hero.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's still lots more to come on today's programme. Lots more breaking news as we've been bringing you throughout the afternoon. But in the meantime, here's the latest headlines.
Yes, good afternoon. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Asylum seekers can continue to live at the Bell Hotel in Essex after a council lost a landmark legal battle to remove them at the High Court. Outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie has told staff the corporation has to stand up for our journalism, insisting it will control its own narrative, which will not just be given by our enemies, he says. It comes a day after the US president threatened legal action if the corporation does not retract false and defamatory statements made about him in a documentary.
I've seen the BBC go through very tumultuous times, and they can be discombobulating. You can ask questions of, where is the BBC going? Are we rudderless? What happens to the future? And they're stressful, they're difficult, and maybe one of my biggest emotions at the moment is I care desperately about the organisation. The thousands of people who work for it, with every cell of my body, I think are absolutely wonderful in what they do. And I think, we all need to be looking after each other and making sure we set everything in context.
The UK's jobless rate has risen to a level not seen since late 2020, according to official figures. It rose to 5% in the 3 months to September, up from 4.8% in the 3 months to August. And the Princess of Wales has led the nation in a 2-minute silence in remembrance of the fallen on Armistice Day. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Good afternoon, Britain. Thank you, Tatiana. Lots more coming up on today's show. The Green Party loves immigration in theory, but just not, it seems, in their own backyard. Are they struggling to match their principles with practicality?
Well, all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, if you've not had any rain yet today, chances are you will see some arriving later on. That's because there's plenty of it around. We do have an area of low pressure just to the west of us, and it's this that's driving frontal systems across the UK, and we end up in this warm sector between the warm front that's making its way northwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland at the moment, and then that cold front that's going to bring some heavy rain into parts of southwest Wales and also across parts of southwest England as well. Further east across parts of England, actually staying largely dry through large chunks of the day, even some glimmers of brightness, and in the sunshine feeling relatively mild for the time of year. Obviously pretty unpleasant where it's wet, and also need to factor in there will be some strong gusty winds. We're talking close to gales in some exposed spots. Now, as we go through the end of the day across the far north of Scotland, actually largely dry with some clear skies, but across the rest of Scotland, well, it is going to be wet and it is going to be windy. Rainfall totals building up. We we could see some disruption, some flooding possible too. Most of the rain will have cleared away from Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but it is staying wet across parts of northern, western England and also parts of Wales as well. Staying dry for now across parts of eastern England. However, as we go overnight, that rain in the west is going to sweep its way through, and so it is going to turn wet here as well. There will also be some drier weather though developing across central southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Here where we get clear skies, it could turn a little fresh for some of us, but most places staying mild. Across parts of the south, the cloud and rain could stay in the low teens Celsius. And then tomorrow we start off with 3 zones of weather really. Rain in the far north or rain towards the south. They'll sandwich together, but in between there is a drier and brighter slot for some parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. Temperatures again on the mild side for the time of year, highs of around 16 Celsius towards the southeast.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the UK. We're truly humbled, and we couldn't have done it without you.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 eastbound faces restrictions between junctions 4 and 6 due to debris along the carriageway. Travellers on the A470 northbound between Pontypridd and Abercynon should be prepared for delays. In Cumbria, the M6 southbound entry slip at junction 44 is blocked by a broken down vehicle. All lanes are currently closed. Moving to rail transport, major disruptions are affecting both Gatwick Express and Great Northern services. To minimise inconvenience, stay updated on the latest travel advisories. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1. Now, the deputy leader of the Green Party, Rachel Millward, well, she's a councillor and she's come under fire after her council objecting to housing asylum seekers in Crowborough.
Yes, the deputy leader of Wilton District Council wrote to Migration Minister Mike Tapp, saying that the authority lacked reassurance that both asylum seekers and local communities will be properly safeguarded.
Now, critics are arguing that the letter contradicts the Green Party's traditionally welcoming stance for asylum seekers and refugees.
Yeah, sort of reminds me of that video of those people saying, refugees welcome, and then every time someone was asked, would you house one, they say, oh, I haven't got space. Oh, no way. But we're joined by Conservative commentator Chris Rose. See, that's the thing, Chris. They're all very well to tell us how awful we are and how far right we are for complaining until it lands in their backyard.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's just mind-blowing hypocrisy. And, you know, the thing about it is, if I was to raise concerns, and certainly if a white working-class person was to raise concerns, they would dismiss it as far-right. But as soon as it comes to their area, all of a sudden, their concerns are suddenly more important. And it's what 600 men, I believe, have moved into her, were going to move to her area. And all of a sudden, she can see the concerns. But where was it when the people of Epping were protesting? I don't believe they've ever shown any support for them. They want to support the refugees welcome people. And, you know, in a way, it's quite a link between the people who live in the least diverse areas and those who want diversity the most. I mean, when you look at Welcome, I believe it's 92% white. I mean, that's quite high compared to other areas. And all of a sudden, they don't want any more diversity. I mean, people like her have told us that it's a great thing. Diversity is our strength. So surely she should be welcoming this strength that she believes in. In fact, when I first read came across her letter, I thought that she was complaining that there wasn't enough illegal migrants moving into her area, because that would be more consistent with her belief.
But it is extraordinary that the language that she uses in this letter, I'll just read out a little bit. She says, and this is someone who has campaigned fervently for more asylum seekers for her entire political career. And now she says that there might be asylum seekers placed in her district. Quite clearly, accommodating 600 men on one site with no right to work brings significant risks. So for her entire political life, she's been campaigning for more and more asylum seekers in this country. And now as soon as they're in her backyard, she says they bring significant risks.
I mean, it is laughable. I mean, when it comes to the Green Party, they love to be NIMBY. They're NIMBY on housing, so it's no surprise that they're absolutely NIMBY on illegal migration. I mean, we should be, telling her, well, are you now part of the far right like the rest of us, apparently, because she's raised these concerns? I mean, it still seems as though the chickens have come home to roost,
well,
where
that's the thing.
her ideology has met her,
reality.
the reality of the situation, and she's going to meet what the rest of us have been trying to complain about. So it may be the only way that the Green Party possibly changed its stance. I mean, I doubt it will. But, this hypocrisy can't really be, it's just laughable. It should not be taken seriously. I mean, I hope these men do move into her area just so she can see what the concerns are like. And, I hope the locals certainly do point out her hypocrisy about it as well.
The problem with it, though, is that it touches these people last. So in the end, it becomes too little too late. So it's easy for those in Whitehall to be saying, oh, no, have more and everything. But they are really far removed, like the Gary Linekers of this world that will say, oh, no, welcome, everybody, and everything else. But they're not going to be touched by this. What would you say, then? Do you think that perhaps she needs to come out and explain her stance and explain her sort of U-turn? Because I'd like to hear from her. I'd like her to be challenged as to why she's changed her mind.
I certainly would as well. I mean, a letter is a bit vague when it says concerns and risks. I want to know exactly what risks and concerns those are, because if they're the same as ours, then it is definitely 100% hypocrisy. Because we pretty much know from the protests we've seen in Epping and across the country as well, what the concerns are from white working class people. So I want to know what a, upper middle class person like her has to say about these illegal migrants that are potentially going to move into her area. Because if it's the same, then why on earth has she been saying refugees welcome? Yeah. Because that's just, brazen hypocrisy and gaslighting as well. And
but it happens so regularly, doesn't it? It's the sort of leafy, quiet places in the country where if you go into a shop, not all the meat is put in little sort of safety packaging in case of shoplifting. I mean, that's not in their areas.
Oh, no.
It's not their areas where there are gangs running about stabbing people. It's not in their areas where there are drug dealers on every doorstep. It's not in their areas where mobile phones are stolen by the 1,000 load every single day. Oh no, they live very quite separate lives from, frankly, millions of people in this country who've seen their areas completely change in so many different ways. And that sort of insulates them from the policies for which they campaign themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see it a lot on Twitter as well, where they instantly dismiss our concerns about crime, illegal migration, sexual assault as well, because they don't come across it in their area as much. They can walk home safely, but with the way things are going, even the most safe areas are now coming under crime that they never used to have. So in a way, they will meet reality at some point. You just, as you say, it will be the last, and it'll be after the rest of us have as well. And hopefully, they can't support their ideology as strong once they meet the reality of the situation. Because many of us, our statuses may have hardened because of the way we've seen more crime over the last few years, particularly in those areas. So I want them to meet reality because it's the only way we'll get through to, the far left.
Yeah. Well, Chris Rose, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Another one who it got through to was Chris Worrell. Do you remember him? He was very, very left-leaning until, of course, there was a conversation that the migrant hotel might be near his house, and then he changed and suddenly became a Conservative and one of the biggest campaigners against them. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, well, Chris is a friend. He's a good guy.
He's a very good guy.
Yeah.
But he did do an about turn. I confronted him on my show and said, hang on a minute, 2 weeks ago you were saying this. Yeah.
It's interesting how people change and develop over time. But we should say that a spokesperson for the Wealdon District Council has said this.
The Alliance for Wealdon takes seriously its commitment to community wellbeing, and that includes any asylum seekers staying in our area. It is clear that housing hundreds of men in an army camp on the edge of a small rural town is not the right thing to do. There are serious concerns for the safety of our community and the wellbeing of asylum seekers, men fleeing trauma, war and persecution.
Our asylum system is broken and needs radical reform, she continues. This is a political choice, costing the government just as much money as the much-maligned hotels, but with more unpleasant consequences. The Home Office failed to deliver any of the promised communications, and as a result, they have helped create an heightened and unnecessary tensions locally. Large army camps are not the right approach.
Yes, I wonder what is then, Katie. Right, GB News has also reached out to the Green Party for comment, and we are awaiting their reply.
And of course, if the Deputy Leader of the Green Party does want to come on the show, more than welcome.
Yeah.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's lots more still to come.
Yes, fresh criticism of Britain's Prevent strategy as a new review warns it's failing to stop radicalisation and protect communities.
Well, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, perhaps away from a migrant encampment, here's the weather in Europe.
And good luck with that.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Lots of fine weather at the moment across the Med, but whilst it's warm in Spain, there is some wet and windy weather moving through Madeira, approaching the Channel Islands and also affecting Portugal. Later, that's going to push through parts of Spain, but ahead of it we've got a southerly airflow and above average temperatures, a lot of sunshine through Italy into Greece as well. Keen breeze here, 1 or 2 showers, and you can see that unsettled weather affecting Tenerife on Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
12,000 men die a year from prostate cancer. I think that's the fact that a lot of people don't realise in the first place, which is scary. But the potential life-saving trial that's been found will allow... Well, there's a study that shows 162,000 men. That could be reduced by 13%. So I think the one thing that's really interesting with prostate cancer is how hard it is actually to get the test. And I think that's one thing. A lot of people are scared to take it, I find. And it's kind of these stats that it's information getting out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you are entitled to it over 50.
You're entitled
to
it.
It's a battle.
It's a postcode lottery. You know, I know men who said I wanted to get the test. I went to my GP. They said I couldn't have it. They had to really fight for it. And of course, like any cancer, catching it early is crucial. I had breast cancer 7 years ago. I was so lucky, caught at my very first mammogram, and I'm still here.
Yeah, I had to fight for it. I had one when I turned 50. And because I just said, I'm entitled to it, I want one. And I really, really had to push, and that's not because a lot of people won't do that.
I think it's the opportunity, as you're saying, like, if you have the opportunity to catch something early, like, people will take it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, sometimes people don't even know about these things, and I think it's about having the opportunity. It's kind of like, OK, reach out, allow people to make that decision themselves. Do they want to find out?
Yeah.
Because people will take it, like, 100%.
No, of course.
Make it easy, make it available.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
We said that at the same
Yes,
time.
Well, it's a major review, actually, that was looking into the UK's counter-terror laws are too broad and failing to keep people safe.
Yes, according to the Independent Commission, the law used to ban Palestine action and the government's Prevent scheme, well, it's creating confusion.
The report also warns that the majority of people referred to the scheme as dismissed for showing no clear ideology, except some committing violent offences later.
OK, let's try and make sense of this all. Joining us is the former Prevent counter-terror officer, Ghaffar Hussain. Thanks indeed for joining us. I mean, it seems like every single time we talk about Prevent, it seems like a scheme that has just bloated beyond any form of recognition or indeed usefulness.
I think part of the problem is the threat becomes so much more complex and diverse in recent years. When Prevent was launched, the threat was primarily Islamist extremism. We had 7/7. The far right was kind of more of a fringe threat in those times, but things have changed a lot since then. What we're having now is not things that aren't necessarily a terrorism threat by individuals who want to commit acts of violence for whatever reason. It could be depression, it could be mental health, it could be they're on drugs, you know, there could be any manner of reasons or people want to commit, but that is being seen as a terrorist threat. And then it's saying Prevent's not stopping that. But Prevent was never designed to stop all manner of violence. That is unexplained. It was only designed to stop ideologically motivated terrorism. So when the threat becomes less ideologically motivated, it's difficult for Prevent to capture that because there isn't a rival or a parallel strategy that is dealing with the non-ideological violence that we're seeing right now. And so that's getting thrown into Prevent, and Prevent doesn't assess it properly because it's not designed to assess it properly. And then there's criticism that Prevent isn't dealing with it comes about. But if you look at the way Prevent was formulated, it was never designed to stop those kind of threats.
But even though, and I do get it, that in order to use the Prevent scheme, it has to be seen as a terrorist threat, which is why people like Axel Rudakabana were refused. But even the people that it does put through, who are going through the Prevent scheme, they become even more radicalised. As I understand, Prevent doesn't even work.
I wouldn't say that's quite true. I mean, Prevent, I've been involved for a long time, and there's been many individual cases of people who have been helped and saved through Prevent. These are cases that I've been personally involved with. The problem is this. First of all, it's a voluntary scheme, right? You can't force someone to engage when you're operating in the pre-criminal space because they haven't committed a crime. So someone is not engaging with you, and typically people who are adults are less likely to engage because their parents and teachers don't have that authority over them. So it's difficult to engage adults anyway. The second thing is, even if you do engage, people can change. People can be showing one kind of risk, and they can change in 5 years' time. People can go, people are on journeys. People can, and also people have multiple issues. So someone like Ali Harbi Ali, for example, the man who stabbed David Amis, he was referred to Prevent, but the risk at the time was quite low, and there was no suggestion that he was planning to go and stab an MP.
Hussain, we have to leave it there, sadly, but I could talk to you for a long time. But in response to this, the Home Office spokesperson said,
"We thank the Independent Commission for their report, which is essential to ensuring our systems continue to be fit for purpose. Prevent continues to play a vital role by stopping people becoming terrorists and has diverted close to 6,000 people away from violent ideologies." Well, that's her statement, and indeed, here's the weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, if you've not had any rain yet today, chances are you will see some arriving later on. That's because there's plenty of it around. We do have an area of low pressure just to the west of us, and it's this that's driving frontal systems across the UK. And we end up in this warm sector between the warm front that's making its way northwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland at the moment, and then that cold front that's going to bring some heavy rain into parts of southwest Wales and also across parts of southwest England as well. Further east across parts of England, actually staying largely dry through large chunks of the day, even some glimmers of brightness, and in the sunshine feeling relatively mild for the time of year. Obviously pretty unpleasant where it's wet, and also need to factor in there will be some strong gusty winds. We're talking close to gales in some exposed spots. Now, as we go through the end of the day across the far north of Scotland, actually largely dry with some clear skies, but across the rest of Scotland, well, it is going to be wet and it is going to be windy. Rainfall totals building up up, we could see some disruption, some flooding possible too. Most of the rain will have cleared away from Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but it is staying wet across parts of northern, western England and also parts of Wales as well. Staying dry for now across parts of eastern England. However, as we go overnight, that rain in the west is going to sweep its way through, and so it is going to turn wet here as well. There will also be some drier weather though developing across central southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Here where we get clear skies, it could turn a little fresh for some of us, but most places staying mild. Across parts of the south, the cloud and rain could stay in the low teens Celsius. And then tomorrow we start off with 3 zones of weather really. Rain in the far north, or rain towards the south. They'll sandwich together, but in between there is a drier and brighter slot for some parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. Temperatures again on the mild side for the time of year, highs of around 16 Celsius towards the southeast.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 11th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua. Asylum seekers will remain housed at the Bell Hotel in Essex after the local council loses its High Court bid to block their stay.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary says this is a dark day for democracy, that the townspeople of Epping's voices have been silenced in their own town.
Elsewhere, the outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie breaks his silence, standing by BBC journalists after Donald Trump threatens to sue the corporation for $1 billion over a misleading Panorama edit.
Yeah, the outgoing Director General Tim Davie issuing a rallying call to staff in the building behind me, telling them they need to fight for their journalism.
And back here, the UK jobless rate hits its highest level since 2020. New figures show unemployment rising faster than expected, piling fresh pressure onto Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of her budget.
Now, the Prevent Counter-Terror scheme is no longer keeping the country safe, a review has found, which calls for a radical overhaul of the system.
Overweight? Well, you might struggle to get into America. Donald Trump's new visa rules target people with health conditions, from obesity to asthma, to stop so-called taxpayer burdens. Should the government do the same here?
And it took 75 goes and cost £1,700. But one learner driver has finally passed their theory test. The highway codes never looked so expensive.
So Donald Trump, interesting plan that he's thinking that he can stop people from, if they're overweight, from coming to the States, or other conditions like asthma.
Yes.
It was a memo sent to embassies to tell them that, hey, someone's got a health condition, a serious one, or they're a bit overweight, no thank you.
There was a specific term he used, wasn't there, which was high-calorie individuals, which is an interesting one. But then there was a former congressman who put out a statement saying, you know, we're heading for a looks-based immigration system.
No,
Hotties only, I think, was his phrase.
But the thing is, when I read this, it says if you suffer with obesity. So you're suffering from it, but it makes it sound like it's a disease that you caught, and not because you stuffed too much in your mouth.
I mean, it's controversial, but I think one of the things now...
Not controversial. Most people are fat because they eat too much.
Absolutely true. But some people find it harder to control what they eat than other people. Some people have bigger appetites.
That's fair enough.
But now we've got these GLP-1 injections,
Yes.
the Ozempics and Wegovy's and Mounjaros of this world. I mean, after millennia, where this world had absolute problems. I mean, in the last couple of years, we've literally solved it. We've cured it. We've done it.
Sort of, although some of them have some serious implications like acid reflux and potential that it could affect your...
Well, if you're morbidly obese, you can have all of those things anyway.
No, but I know, but a lot of people taking it who aren't morbidly obese, and that's the other problem.
Yeah.
A lot of people who think, oh, I'm just a little bit fat, but you're not that fat, you're just slightly overweight or not as thin as you'd like to be.
I've been reading that there are scientists who are working on a pill version of this. And that could come out in the next year or two. I mean, I think a lot of people are reticent to inject themselves. It feels much more like a procedure rather than just popping a pill. I mean, this is going to... When the pill comes out, it will be one of the most transformatory pills since, what we refer to as the pill, that completely transformed society in the 1960s.
I think it depends, though, because you've got to take time to see if there are... what kind of side effects they have. I mean, a lot of those people may well have just jumped into the code.
Well, we do have quite a lot of data on it now, because it used to be a medicine for diabetes. So we've got quite a lot of relatively long-term data on it.
But I think, we shall see. We shall see. Because a lot of those things, I don't know, I think people who don't need it and are taking it, I think we'll find out what kind of side effects those have. But if you're overweight, massively, obese, then fair enough. Send us your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. First, headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories. Asylum seekers can continue to live at an Essex hotel after a council lost a landmark legal battle to remove them at the High Court. Epping Forest District Council sought to block migrants lodging at the Bell Hotel in Epping by arguing its owner had flouted planning rules. But Mr Justice Mould dismissed that claim, ruling an injunction was not an appropriate means of enforcing planning control. A wave of protests was staged outside the hotel in the summer following the arrest of an asylum seeker living there, who was later jailed for sexual offences. The judge today said he rejected the idea that hotel owner Samani Hotels had shown a flagrant or persistent abuse of planning control. Reacting to the news, the Conservatives said the court had given a slap in the face to the people of Epping. Outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie has told staff the corporation has to stand up for our journalism, insisting it will control its own narrative, which will not just be given by our enemies, he says. It comes a day after US President Donald Trump threatened legal action if the corporation does not retract false and defamatory statements made about him in a documentary.
Seen the BBC go through very tumultuous times, and they can be discombobulating. You can ask questions of, where is the BBC going? Are we rudderless? What happens to the future? And they're stressful. They're difficult. And, you know, maybe one of my biggest emotions at the moment is I care desperately about the organisation. You know, the thousands of people who work for it, with every cell of my body, I think are absolutely wonderful in what they do. And I think, you know, we all need to be looking after each other and making sure we set everything in context.
The US president threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion over the editing of his speech in a Panorama documentary. His legal team is giving the broadcaster until Friday evening to respond. Last night on The Late Show Live, GB News' Ben Leo had an exclusive interview with the lawyer representing President Trump.
The president is extremely frustrated, yet adamant in his belief that he is going to hold accountable those that engage in and peddle in false information and untruthful statements. And so he's upset about it for his own benefit and really for the community as a whole, given the fact that institutions such as the BBC have the ability and the free rein to engage in such defamatory conduct.
Shadow Culture and Media Secretary Nigel Huddleston told GB News the BBC owes Donald Trump an apology.
They were wrong, and Donald Trump has a perfectly legitimate concern here. It could be perceived to be misleading. It transparently was. I mean, doctoring the video, but also the whole programme, there was issues. If you look at the number of people who were interviewed, it was 10-1, the people who opposed Donald Trump to those who supported him. And there wasn't a compensatory programme for Kamala Harris. So I think the president has some legitimate concerns. When they make an error, and when they have an error of judgment, which, by the way, the BBC chair has now admitted, they need to admit that they got it seriously wrong. What they did was mislead the public and give the impression that Donald Trump said something that he transparently did not.
Local Government Minister Alison McGovern told GB News the BBC is one of her constituents' most trusted media organisations.
I hope he is proud of the staff at the BBC, because I know that my constituents rely on and largely trust the BBC. It's one of our most trusted media organisations. And I would say, just as I was saying before a moment ago, if there actually have been editorial issues, the right thing is for the BBC to apply high journalistic standards and to get on and sort the problems out. If there are questions of, problematic edits or whatever, deal with the problems. I'm sure many people in media organisations like yourselves have experienced that. People should leave their political views at the door when they go into work as a journalism and ask the right questions and get to the truth.
Now, the Queen and the Princess of Wales are attending services marking Armistice Day as events take place around the world. The Princess is at a ceremony at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire as the end of World War I was commemorated with a 2-minute silence. Queen Camilla is at Paddington Station in London for a wreath-laying ceremony, having travelled by train from Wiltshire. The Prince of Wales is also delivering a video message to young people, sharing his views on the importance of wearing a red poppy and to say that remembrance is for everyone. Latest data from the ONS shows a worse-than-expected rise in the rate of unemployment to 5% in the 3 months to September, up from 4.8% in the 3 months to August, and the highest level since early 2021. This was more than the 4.9% expected by most analysts. The ONS said average regular wage growth also pulled back again to 4.6% in the 3 months to September, down from 4.7% in the previous 3 months, and was 0.8% higher after taking Consumer Prices Index inflation into account. Wage growth is now the lowest seen since April 2022. And those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3122 and €1.1348. Price of gold, £3,155.30 per ounce. The FTSE 100 at 9,876 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past 2. Now straight to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who has some breaking news for us.
Yes, this is with regard to the number of prisoners mistakenly released by the prison service. The Ministry of Justice have just confirmed to us that since April this year to the end of last month, 91 prisoners were released by mistake within the prison service. We don't know on that number how many have since been returned to custody. I would have imagined that the majority probably have been returned to custody, but you know, a significant and sobering figure. I mean, what I will say is it looks to be down on the figure for the last year, which was the year to March, which showed 262 prisoners that had been released in error. A part of that, I think, was because of the changes that this government put through to release prisoners at the 40% of their sentence having been served behind bars point. That was to relieve the prison overcrowding crisis. However, it did mean a huge churn in the number of releases that the prison service was having to deal with, and I think undoubtedly added to a lot of the errors that were made in the past year. But this year anyway, that's still a very significant figure. 91 prisoners that have been released in error since April, and of course we've still got 2 whole months to go. In fact, more than that, because if we're taking it from April this year to April next year, we've still got another 5 months to go. So we're probably going to be, potentially on the current trend, going to be up about 150 prisoners that will have been released by error by the time we get to the beginning of April next year.
Mark, this is clearly a decrease on that bumper year we had last year, but it appears to me to be an increase still on the final year under the Conservative government, which I have as 115 accidental releases. Still an extraordinary and frankly embarrassing number. But for the first 6 months of this financial year, I suppose is how they do it, to have 91 releases, that's almost as many as in the entire 12 months of the 23 to 24 period.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If we imagine that the trajectory will continue at the rate of mistaken releases for the next 5 months until we get to April of next year, then it's going to be well over 115, which would have been, which was the figure for the year before that was wholly under the Conservatives. Part of last year's figure was partly under the Conservatives, but the bulk of it was under Labour. And as I say, you know, the prison service dealing with the changes that Shabana Mahmood, as was the Justice Secretary then, had implemented. So there's no doubt, even, you know, 91, if it doesn't go much beyond that, that's still unacceptably high for the number of prisoners. Some of those dangerous prisoners serving sentences for violence and for sexual offences that have been mistakenly released. And of course, the most notable, Hadoush Kabatu and Habir, I should say, Qadir Sharif, that Algerian national who was also mistakenly released most recently.
All right, thank you very much, Mark White. Now, outgoing BBC boss Tim Davie praised staff this morning and said the corporation must stand up for our journalism and insisted that it will control its own narrative, which will not just be given by our enemies.
We will thrive. We will thrive. And this narrative will not just be, you know, given by our enemies. It's our narrative. I do hear everyone when we have to be very clear and stand up for our journalism. We are a unique and precious organisation.
Strange mindset to be saying enemies. I would have thought that people pointing out editorial failures of the BBC are critical friends.
Well, they did it to themselves. Nobody did it to them. It's not something that an enemy has come. This is their own bad journalism.
Well, it comes a day after the US President Donald Trump threatened to sue the corporation for $1 billion over the editing of his speech in a Panorama documentary.
Well, joining us now from outside New Broadcasting House is GB News' national reporter, Will Godley. Will, what more can you tell us?
Well, Nana, Tom, good afternoon from New Broadcasting House. And the impression I'm getting on the ground here is that in the building behind me, the dust is beginning to settle after, of course, those two bombshell resignations late on Sunday night. The CEO of News, Deborah Tenness, and Tim Davie, the Director General. As I'm being told, conversations inside New Broadcasting House are now turning to who will be replacing Tim Davie as Director General, as people are waiting in lifts, in the corridors. That is all people are talking about. And one person spoke to me telling me that they're hopeful that the next Director General will be as much of a champion of the BBC and the BBC's values as Tim Davie is. And certainly he was championing the BBC and the people who work there in this 40-minute call he had with staffers earlier on today, answering some of their questions, in which he told staff that he is fiercely proud of the BBC and that he said journalists were doing a fantastic job in the building behind me. He also told them that they must fight for our journalism, the BBC's journalism. Of course, a big part of that fight will be coming up as the BBC looks to renew their charter. The current one runs out at the end of 2027. Tim Davie on this call said that he thought the BBC was in a really good position and had a very strong case for that charter renewal. But of course, reporting this morning in the Telegraph is suggesting that these conversations are already going to be taking place and already beginning about what that charter renewal will look like. And according to this Telegraph reporting today, they said that the government will have a comprehensive look at the way the BBC operates, including looking at the licence fee, which could change the way the BBC operates and make a bit of a headache for the new Director General.
All right. Well, Godley, thank you very much.
Well, let's speak to the political advisor, Pablo O'Hannah, now, because, Pablo, I know you've worked in the United States, you worked for the Kamala Harris presidential campaign. Donald Trump has not been a stranger to suing media organisations and not been a stranger to, quite successfully, squeezing quite a bit of money out of them.
Yeah, and I can say from experience that you do not want to live in a world where we don't have something like the BBC. I think we're in a really dangerous place when anti-BBC figures like Boris Johnson and Donald Trump can repeatedly lie about anything from lockdown parties to election results. And no one even looks up, but a single acknowledged and apologised for mistake has become proof that nothing is trustworthy. The BBC has apologised, leaders have taken responsibility, and standards, I'm sure, and should be tightened. But Britain needs a strong, independent BBC at home. And as a world-class soft power, we forget this, but it really is an asset to the UK on the world stage. And I think in a world where journalism is actually increasingly, blocked, in it's 75% of the world actually doesn't have free journalism, the BBC has never been more important. We should fix what went wrong, absolutely, and defend the rest of it.
But the thing is though, it's not that people don't want the BBC. In fact, I want a BBC. The problem I'm having here is that the BBC has gone out there and made those mistakes itself and tried to twist a narrative. And how many other things have they done that to? It's not just that one thing alone, is it, though? It's also the coverage of Israel and Gaza. It's also that documentary featuring the son of a Hamas operative. They never mentioned it. It's also their coverage on transgenderism, the disciplining of Martine Croxall for simply pointing out a reality and a fact. It's the behaviours, and then listening to Tim Davie saying it's our enemies. And it's not our enemies. We want exactly what you're talking about. But we can't have that if they behave like this. They need to be held to account, surely.
Absolutely, and you should put your hands up when you get it wrong. And I do think that the BBC does that. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find another news organisation, any actually news organisation in the world, which would send push notifications to tens of millions of phones about itself, apologising, correcting. You can't find another organisation because actually no broadcaster, no paper does that. Only the BBC, yes, clunky, late, frustrating. But you know what? None of us are perfect. We've all made a mistake or two, I'm sure, sometimes live on TV. But the BBC remains trusted because they do hold their hands up. As they say, sometimes late, sometimes clunky, and we want them to get there a little bit faster. But I don't think you'll find any other news organisation that corrects itself and apologises in the way
That's because they're not accountable to Ofcom. They've got their own complaints department, and then eventually it's only if everyone complains and something. But we're accountable, so we have to. We don't have a choice. Sorry, Tom.
Sorry, I was going to say. I mean, I think the BBC is held to account. I think that we are seeing it now that they're being held accountable. That is the right thing to do. And I do think we have to look at why the commercial rivals and opponents want to bring the BBC down.
No, they don't.
Despite their best efforts, the BBC remains the most used, most trusted news source in the world, and a globally recognised brand. As I say, they have a 24/7 worldwide operation that our papers simply can't match. And if they attack it for being, too dominant, then they admit that it's invaluable. So instead they're crying bias and lies and listen, the BBC is not perfect. We can all admit that. But the answer here should be to build up and hold accountable.
Of course,
BBC,
commercial news organisations can't compete with a tax-funded organisation. I mean, you're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, this is an organisation that owns the primary spots in broadcast, has existed since broadcast began, and offers its journalism without advertising for free because it is funded by a poll tax.
Which is exactly why it's so important. The BBC continues to provide more information, more news, but not just that. Remember that the BBC is more than just a news channel. It delivers award-winning drama, comedy, children's shows, documentaries.
So does Netflix. But I mean, here's the problem, right?
But not on the same scale.
What we have seen over the course of the last decade or so is a massive shift in how people consume media. I mean, the BBC used to be a broadcast organisation. It is now, in effect, a newspaper. When it was founded, it would have been absolutely bonkers to imagine the state would go about printing newspapers and handing them out for free. And yet that's what the BBC website now does. And it does that in local forms as well. What have we seen commensurately over the same period of time? Local newspapers closing down in city after city, in town after town, in county after county. Particularly, perhaps, because they've been pushed out by a state-funded product. This is in some ways hurt local journalism.
No, actually, on the contrary, the local democracy reporters that the BBC pays for, which go to local papers like the Manchester Evening News and the Liverpool Echo, they get good, funded local democracy reporters who go in and they do the really boring stuff like
they've hollowed out local journalism, local papers, local democracy, and now they offer a couple of journalisms to the few local papers that are left standing.
Pablo, they've actually got rid of local radio, which is the bastion, which is one of the best things that they had, which was the community-based stuff.
They've not got rid of local radio.
And I've just got to say that it's not about competitors wanting to bring them down. I said to you at the beginning, I don't want to bring them down, but they don't need my help, though, on that one, do they? They're doing a good job on their own. Pablo, I've got to leave it there. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
It's time for the Great British Giveaway now. If you're starting to feel festive, how about Christmas on us this year? Here's how to win.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts, the tree, the trimmings, everything you might need for a fantastic festive day. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. US President Donald Trump has issued a new directive to ban obese foreigners or people with diabetes looking to live in the US from obtaining visas.
Yes, the new guidelines instruct visa officers to reject applicants who may be eligible for public benefits as part of the president's hardline crackdown on immigration, all to prevent people becoming dependent on those public benefits and draining the US resources.
So with an increasing obesity problem in the UK, should the UK follow Trump and ban visas for fat people?
Well, joining us now is the body positivity influencer and actor George Keywood and the former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller. Steve, I think I might know what you think about this one. Let's kick off with you.
Well, I think this is great. I think this is Trump using common sense. This is Trump putting his country first. And wouldn't that be a breath of fresh air if we had it in the UK? Of course, by encouraging people that are too fat and have already got medical conditions, serious medical conditions, coming into your country, what I'm saying is, it is a common sense factor because the likelihood is that they're going to cost your country a lot of money. And let's face it, the taxpayer is already under stress. The NHS is knackered. And do you know how much it costs per year to look after someone with diabetes? It costs up to £3,000 a year. So no, we're bust. We can't afford it. So Trump's policy is something absolutely we should adopt. It's common sense, and I think most British people would agree.
George Keywood, what do you think? Is he being unfair?
Well, I'm British and I completely disagree. It's absolute nonsense, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, Jesus Christ. Are we getting to the point where we're saying that fat people can't go in a country? I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. And it's something that I expect for somebody like that to say. I mean, Jesus. I mean, really? I pay enough tax in this country. I, contribute my fair share and I shouldn't be allowed to go into another country. Why not? All I'm going to do is go there and make more money and pay more tax for them. So I don't understand why it's always got to be about image and the way that somebody looks dictates whether or not they're allowed to be somebody.
It's not about what someone looks, George. It's about their health.
Isn't it? It's about them being fat.
No, not at all. You're digressing again.
Isn't it?
Yeah, go on,
no,
Steve.
it's not about what
So let Steve reply.
It is, mate. It's about them being fat, and there's a problem with people having an issue with people that are fat because they don't like the fact that people don't care about what they eat. They don't like the fact that every skinny person out there is worried about what they eat all the time, whereas us fat people don't care.
George, you need a large helping on your plate of common sense. It is common sense that if someone is too fat and someone comes into my country with diabetes or other health-related conditions, that they are going to potentially put a strain on the NHS. And a 2019 report and study totally agrees with me. And it's about time we.
But you're saying potentially you don't have facts to prove that. There's no facts to prove that at all.
There is facts to prove that.
You're saying that. So if I go to America, am I going to cost the Americans any money? No, I'm not. I'm going to go there for a holiday. I'm going to go and make some money. You know, I'm not going to cost anything to anybody. No, I'm not. I'm not going to cost anybody anything.
No, you are actually potentially. You're going to cost. You're going to cost the country money over there if you are obese. That is fact. That is reality. And what Trump is saying is, actually, I'm putting my country first. I'm putting my taxpayers first. I'm not going to allow people coming into this country to drain my system. So, you know, bring into the country radiators, not drains.
The country's falling apart as it is, mate. Look at the state of it out there. It's absolutely ludicrous. The guy has destroyed that country. You think he cares about that country?
Control, George. He's got immigration
under control. That country. No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't.
Well,
he is the most racist person that ever existed,
I can
mate.
vouch for him on immigration. He has reduced immigration. He has done that.
Yeah, he's a despicable human being. Honestly, I don't know anybody can sit here and say that he's a good person. How could you do that?
I mean,
Nobody could do that.
I think, George, I think at the end of the day, they've got a lot of people overweight in his own country that he should, he's got there anyway. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know, But anyway, look, obesity is not great for your health. That's the bottom line. And I think that's I think that's the point he's trying to make. All right, thank you very much, George Keywood, and also Steve Miller. Interesting.
Although it's true that for the first time in, I think it's about half a century, the number of Americans who are obese has started to decline.
That's good.
Because so many of them are on these weight loss jabs now. Incredible.
Yeah, I was told off by somebody who said that I didn't care. I will read that later. I do care. I used to have a fitness business, actually. But I'm afraid it is true. If you eat too much, you do put on weight. That's the bottom line.
Well, lots more still to come on today's programme.
Yes, Britain's jobless rate climbs to a 4-year high. We'll ask what it means for our Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of her budget.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, if you've not had any rain yet today, chances are you will see some arriving later on. That's because there's plenty of it around. We do have an area of low pressure just to the west of us, and it's this that's driving frontal systems across the UK, and we end up in this warm sector between the warm front that's making its way northwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland at the moment, and then that cold front that's going to bring some heavy rain into parts of southwest Wales and also across parts of southwest England as well. Further east across parts of England, actually staying largely dry through large chunks of the day, even some glimmers of brightness, and in the sunshine feeling relatively mild for the time of year. Obviously pretty unpleasant where it's wet, and also need to factor in there will be some strong gusty winds. We're talking close to gales in some exposed spots. Now, as we go through the end of the day across the far north of Scotland, actually largely dry with some clear skies, but across the rest of Scotland, well, it is going to be wet and it is going to be windy. Rainfall totals building up. We could see some disruption, some flooding possible too. Most of the rain will have cleared away from Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but it is staying wet across parts of northern, western England and also parts of Wales as well. Staying dry for now across parts of eastern England. However, as we go overnight, that rain in the west is going to sweep its way through, and so it is going to turn wet here as well. There will also be some drier weather though developing across central southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Here where we get clear skies, it could turn a little fresh for some of us, but most places staying mild. Across parts of the south, the cloud and rain could stay in the low teens Celsius. And then tomorrow we start off with 3 zones of weather really. Rain in the far north, or rain towards the south. They'll sandwich together, but in between there is a drier and brighter slot for some parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England. Temperatures again on the mild side for the time of year, highs of around 16 Celsius towards the southeast.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 8 million followers across social media. Thank you for making us a part of your daily life.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A90 at Brecon has a planned contraflow due to roadworks. Motorists on the A470 northbound between Pontypridd and Abercynon face delays. In Cumbria, the M6 southbound at junction 44 is closed due to a broken down vehicle. Rotherham's M18 northbound between junction 1 and 2 has congestion with one lane closed from an earlier collision. The A38 northbound in Staffordshire shows a 10-minute delay. Hertfordshire's M25 clockwise has a lane closed because of a broken down vehicle. And on the trains, there is major disruption to both the Gatwick Express and Great Northern services. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 36 minutes past 2. And it's not been a good time for the Ministry of Justice.
No, not really at all. It's been tragic, especially with that terrible performance in the Houses of Commons when David Lammy took PMQs. It was just embarrassing. He was shouting, wouldn't answer the same question 5 times about escaped illegal asylum seekers. Turned out it was somebody who'd overstayed their visa. And we discovered it moments after he'd declined to answer the question and PMQs ended.
And it does seem that there is a big problem here, because it wasn't just about David Lammy's refusal to answer the question, but of course it was about the 262 accidentally released prisoners that we saw in the year to April 2025. Just the most staggering doubling of the number of prisoners accidentally released by the Justice Department.
Well, it was just shocking as well, because obviously with Haidish Kabasi, who was such a high-profile inmate, and the fact that he'd actually tried to come back in and people had sent him out, and then the whole sort of Benny Hill-esque thing that unfolded, and eventually they sent him away with 500 quid. All of it just smacks of complete incompetence, and David Lammy, although he can't be blamed for all of it, to be fair, because he's only been there for 2 months, but it just smacks of utter incompetence of the whole system, really.
Well, we're talking about this, of course, because David Lammy is currently answering questions in the House of Commons. Let's listen in.
Come before the House and say that we will get a temporary derogation from the Refugee Convention, the Convention of Human Rights, and that we will detain and deport anybody who enters this country illegally and will solve the crisis. No, sir.
Well, I know that the Right Honourable Gentleman is hugely experienced. He will know that it's important that we don't do anything, for example, that might undermine the Good Friday Agreement, where the ECHR is fundamental and important. He rightly mentions the Refugee Convention. That sits with the United Nations. I will be going to Strasbourg shortly, where I'll be taking up many of these issues.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, there are perhaps other unforeseen consequences of leaving the ECHR, including on the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities. Does the Minister agree with me that opposition parties wishing to leave the ECHR either haven't considered the impacts of leaving on Cornish national minority status, or they have but just don't care about the Cornish?
So stay.
Well, he will know that there were promises made in relation to the debate that we had on exiting the European Union, and all sorts of things were promised by many colleagues opposite, and they were not delivered. And it feels a little bit like we're on repeat in relation to this. There are areas of immigration where we do have to do things domestically. There are areas where we want to work with European colleagues who also are concerned at the way that laws are being thwarted. But please let us not undermine a fundamental that was actually instituted by one of the heroes of this Parliament, Winston Churchill.
Shadow Secretary of State Robert Jemry.
Mr. Speaker, Fawad Awale is an extremist and double murderer who later took a prison officer hostage and demanded the release of the radical cleric Abu Qatada. He is the definition of evil. And yet, the Justice Secretary's Department is now set to pay him compensation, as his ECHR rights have apparently been infringed because he couldn't associate with monsters like those who killed Lee Rigby. Will the Justice Secretary ensure that not a single penny of taxpayers' money is handed over to this man? And if he won't, and he puts our membership of the ECHR above the interests of the British people, will he put his money where his mouth is and pay any so-called compensation himself?
So stay.
I know that the Right Honourable Gentleman is always keen to get headlines, but he knows that the consequences of judgments and what then impacts on government and any payments made have been an issue for successive governments for the entire time that he and I have been on the planet. He knows that we're committed to the ECHR, offering asylum to those who genuinely are fleeing torture and execution, but he knows too that on the issues that I referred to earlier, Article 8 particularly, and what we can do domestically, and how we can work with European colleagues, we are seeking to do that. So this is not the time to start revising decisions that have effectively been made by our courts.
Mr. Roberts.
Well, there, just a taster of David Lammy in the House of Commons, a man clearly under pressure. Let's dissect some of it now with our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, it was a fairly disastrous performance at Deputy Prime Minister's questions last week.
I mean, it was absolutely disastrous. I was there at PMQs, and the Deputy Prime Minister was obviously blindsided by the Conservatives asking these 6 questions about the release of another prisoner. It was very clear to everyone sitting there that another prisoner had been accidentally released. And it turned out later that David Lammy actually had a statement in front of him, which was pre-prepared, explaining about the release of another prisoner. He chose not to divulge it and then was caught off guard with these questions from James Cartledge, who was standing in for Kemi Badenoch. Then we went to a lobby briefing afterwards where the Prime Minister's spokesman clearly didn't know anything about the accidental release of this prisoner. So David Lammy hadn't passed on the information to Number 10, which is just astonishing. Last week it looked as though David Lammy might be sacked. He seems to have clung on. I imagine Keir Starmer doesn't really want to lose another very senior cabinet minister after a torrid few months.
Lose another Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But the problems just keep coming for David Lammy. We now know that there were 4 prisoners who were accidentally released from prison, 3 of whom are still on the loose. Absolutely bizarre. 262, as you said, prisoners have been released in the last year. That's well up, nearly double what it was on the previous year under the Conservatives. There's now a piece in the Telegraph, pretty extraordinary piece, showing that David Lammy is considering moving female prisoners into a different form of accommodation, not a prison, sort of residential accommodation, in order to make room for male prisoners. Now, the cost of housing a female prisoner in accommodation rather than a prison is about £60,000 to £100,000 per year per person, more than double what it costs to house these people in a prison. And the way this story got out was the Ministry of Justice official who was in charge of this policy accidentally emailed it to Robert Jenrick.
Oh, God.
So
we could be spending more on female prisoners than we do sending a child to Eton.
Well, exactly. I mean, really extraordinary statistics. And there is a plan as well to begin to release prisoners after serving just 30% of their time, as opposed to 40%, which in itself has proved very controversial, with some violent offenders and sexual offenders released after just 40% of their time in prison. So lots and lots of issues facing David Lammy, all of them coming at the same time. And Robert Jenrick is obviously very hot on his case.
Well, didn't he also say, because he came up with the most stringent measures after the release of Hamish Kuboti, which I saw him say will be instilled immediately, and then he explained, oh no, they hadn't yet been put in place when he was questioned about them.
Well, exactly. He said that he wanted more stringent measures. It doesn't seem as though those were put in place immediately, particularly as this second prisoner was released from Wandsworth Prison, where the first one was released from as well. You know, the Labour Party are blaming the Conservatives, and to an extent you can see where they're coming from. The Conservatives did preside over a system which had got into a real mess by the time Labour took over, not least because of the COVID lockdowns and those hold up in the courts, people being shunted into prison, not being able to leave, appeals being delayed, etc. So the system was a mess when Labour inherited it. But then this second early release scheme, the Conservatives enacted one early release scheme while they were still in power. Then Labour did a slightly separate second early release scheme. That created a lot of bureaucracy, red tape and confusion. And that seems to be, at least in part, the reason for these accidental early releases.
God, what a mess. And also he's wearing his poppy in the wrong way, because it's pointing to...
He's managed to wear a poppy, David Lammy, this time round, but it is upside down.
It's upside down, because it's supposed to be pointing at 11 o'clock.
Right. Well, it's just not going well for him, is it? Well, Olivia Utley, thanks indeed for talking through all of that for us. Oh, dear, goodness me. Mind. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there is still plenty more to come.
Yes, talk about determination. One learner driver finally passes their theory test on the 75th attempt. Will reveal how much it cost them.
Well, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, perhaps you'd like to drive through the Channel Tunnel and all around Europe. Here's the weather there.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Lots of fine weather at the moment across the Med, but whilst it's warm in Spain, there is some wet and windy weather moving through Madeira, approaching the Channel Islands and also affecting Portugal. Later, that's going to push through parts of Spain, but ahead of it we've got a southerly airflow and above average temperatures, a lot of sunshine through Italy into Greece as well. Keen breeze here, 1 or 2 showers, and you can see that unsettled weather affecting Tenerife on Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3. And here's one for you.
Yes.
A learner driver has finally passed their theory test on the 75th try.
Yes, very good.
Now, how much money would they have had to spend doing 75 tests?
I don't know how much it is a lesson these days.
Well, I think it's £1,700 on these theory test fees.
Yes, the AEA Driving School's managing director said it is easy to underestimate the level of knowledge required to pass the theory test.
Well, meanwhile, another learner has attempted the test an astonishing 128 times without any success, racking up a bill of almost £3,000.
Yeah, Yeah, God. I passed second time. Yeah.
Oh, there's me.
You, Tom
there's me.
Harwood.
That's me passing my practical driving test first time. That was earlier this year.
The practical one's the easy one. I'm so glad we didn't have to do the theory on its own. What we had was a couple of questions after you'd driven.
I don't like how my picture's there with the words 75th time lucky. that implies to any passerby casually looking at this television screen might think that it took me 75 times to pass. That's outrageous slander. Careful, GB News. I'll come for you like Donald Trump's coming for the BBC.
Yeah, no, I think if you did that, you'd be out of a job. Sorry about that. I think you've forgotten who's got the power.
Oh, it's so true.
But listen, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. I'm going to tell you this one, because this is when we were interviewing the Prevent guy.
Yeah.
And Andy said, Tom and Nana, oops, Nana really didn't like being laughed at as she tried to be too clever for her own level of knowledge. It was like watching a petulant child being scolded and they sulk. That's why I love GB News. It's the unintentional funnies and comedy of it all. Andy, just to put the record straight, the reason he laughed was because I was right. Yes, Prevent has had a problem, and in fact, in 2023, William Shawcross did an independent review that said that it failed to prevent attacks and failed to understand the difficulties, and that they needed a complete reform. So there, he laughed, and we didn't have time. Otherwise, I would have gone in for the kill. That's why. OK, Andy?
I like that you get to set the record straight.
Well, I know, for my own level of intelligence. Oh. Honestly, what does he know?
Well, I do think Andy has a point, though. The unintentional funniness is very often... But also...
And that's an unintentional funny right there.
Right there? That's an unintentional funny... I mean, can we stop playing... God, honestly, I don't know what to do. And 75th time lucky. First time lucky. First time lucky. And you not lucky, talented.
Yes, and you like going out on your little car with your jollies. Listen,
I do.
It's been a pleasure, as ever. Really good to have your company here on GB News.
Yes, and it's been a breaking afternoon of news. Yes. So everything from the Epping Hotel to the BBC to David Lammy's position. Martin Daubney is picking up the baton and he will continue all of this breaking news for the next 3 hours. Don't move a muscle.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good afternoon to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. More rain to come for many of us through the next couple of days, and it is staying exceptionally mild for most as well. Currently, we're trapped in a warm sector with a warm front pushing its way northwards across parts of Scotland and a cold front sweeping in from the west. Both these frontal systems, they're bringing a fair amount of rain as we go through the end of today and overnight into tomorrow, but a lot of it is clearing away towards the north and pushing further east. As a result, there will be some drier, clearer weather developing across southern parts of Scotland, northern parts of England and Wales, and also much of Northern Ireland. Where we get these clearer skies, the drier weather, it could turn a little fresh, a little chilly for some, but most places will stay pretty mild. Some places only dropping to around 12 or 13 Celsius. As we go through tomorrow then, it's a wet start across many parts of the south and the southeast. That front lingering here, rainfall totals building up across the southwest in particular, and some strong winds. Also a bit of a damp start across parts of Scotland and the far north of Northern Ireland, but actually in between those two zones